All kids out of the pool for Adult Swim.
Hi, editing me here. So I debated whether or not to have an intro in this video at all when I filmed this, but I had no clue when I filmed this what an experience this video would put me through. First, I just moved and I accidentally filmed in the echoiest part of my house for the book part of the video. Then this video broke my computer. I literally could not get the file open at all, so I had a mental breakdown and purchased and built my own supercomputer, and I was finally able to edit. So it goes without saying that I'm super grateful for all of you who continue to support my channel and are so patient with me, and of course, all of our sponsors. Hey, quick, everyone, look over there. Gotcha, it's just me. Telling you about today's sponsor, HelloFresh. I had been dying to try HelloFresh. I'm something of an amateur chef myself. I have the camera roll to prove it. We all know that the worst part of cooking is having to go to the store and overpay for heavy whipping cream because the store doesn't have the store brand heavy whipping cream, so you have to buy the expensive heavy whipping cream, or having to buy the most unnecessarily large bundle of parsley just to chop up a little bit of it and sprinkle it on at the end, and then let it rot in the veggie drawer at the bottom of your fridge. Well, all these problems are things of the past thanks to HelloFresh. HelloFresh dinners are created by chefs like myself. You get to choose from seasonal recipes that come with farm-fresh ingredients, picked at peak ripeness, and sent to you within a week, so no more standing around and squeezing all the limes at the grocery store. And my personal favorite part, it's already pre-portioned, so all you have to do is wash it, chop it up, throw it in the pan, and enjoy. Groceries are so expensive, and sometimes when you're busy with school and work, it can just be easier to get takeout. But we're not gonna succumb this year, y'all. We're gonna eat right and take care of the old ticker. If not now, when? HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping and up to 70% less expensive than eating out at a restaurant. So if you want to be a chef like me and have your camera roll look like this, go to HelloFresh.com and use code MILA60, that's MILA60, for 60% off plus free shipping. Thank you, HelloFresh, and enjoy the video. Alright, first of all, if you haven't seen my first after video, go check that out right now. You probably won't be able to watch this one without watching that one first, so I give you permission to leave right now and go watch that, but only if you promise to come back. But I'm not the police, so if you want to watch this one without watching that one, go ahead. But if you're confused, don't be mad at me. We're gonna begin our evening with a quick character recap, and then a recap of the story from last time, because even if you did watch the video, or you read the books, there's still a chance that you probably trauma blocked it out of your brain, so I'm gonna recap it anyway. Oh, I also decided that for fun I'm gonna show you who I imagined in my head while I was reading this book, and some of them I know are the same ones that I imagined when I read it when I was 14. So, here we go. Our cast of characters, obviously Tessa, she's our main character. We live in her head for the entire first book. She's super nerdy and shy, but since she's away from her mom and Noah, who she feels like is kind of an extension of her mom, and she's not acting how she thinks she should act, she's unleashing this wild, sexy side, which we'll build on in this book. Noah is Tessa's ex-boyfriend, childhood best friend, next-door neighbor, only person that it seems like she knew before college. As far as we know at this point, we don't ever hear her talk about a girlfriend. Her mom's name is Carol. She and Tessa's dad had been split up since Tessa was a kid. He was a drunk and used to put his hands on her, and she's sacrificed everything to give Tessa the life that she's had. But she and Tessa have a horrible relationship, even though they are the same exact person. Steph is Tessa's roommate when she moves away to college. She's a burnout and the connection to the boys of One Direction, which is the entire reason that this book exists. In case you didn't know, welcome to After. It is a One Direction fan fiction. All 5 of them are featured in the book to varying levels of importance. The story is mostly about Tessa and Harry though, so he's the most important. And then his friends are Niall, Louis, and Zayn. Liam's actually not in their friend group. He's more of a nerdy and sweet character. He's more like Tessa than he is the rest of the One Direction guys. And he has a long-distance relationship with a girl named Danielle, which is the actual name of Liam Payne's girlfriend that he had at this time. And their relationship foils Harry and Tessa's in every way. They actually like each other. And his mom is about to marry Harry's dad, Ken, who is the chancellor of their college. He and Harry have had a tumultuous relationship, to say the least. He was pretty absent throughout Harry's childhood, and he would go drinking a lot. And all this came to a head when some shady people that his dad had gotten mixed up with, they showed up at the house and his mother. And that's the basis for these horrible night terrors that he has all the time where he's constantly reliving this night. Steph's friends also include some non-One Direction people like Tristan, who's her boyfriend, and Molly, who was Harry's friends with benefits type situation thing before Tessa showed up. And she really hates Tessa. She's really bitter about her being there and like not fitting in. And then there's also Jace, who's like if Harry's dark side came to life. At Harry's absolute worst points, he and Jace are the exact same person. And he does literal diabolical criminal things to prove that he doesn't care to Jace, but it's really just like trying to impress him very obviously. And though it sounds like they'd be two peas in a pod with a relationship like this, he really, really resents Jace and he blames everything wrong that he does on him because like, it was his idea. But they're essentially the same person. And that's kind of it. Everyone that Tessa knows is either related to her, related to Harry, or Noah. The only other characters you need to know are Vance and Kimberly. Vance is Ken's friend, Harry's family friend, and he gives Tessa an internship at his publishing company. Kimberly is his girlfriend who is the receptionist there. And then Trevor's a guy who works in the office. He's very Liam-coded, except he's single, so he's kind of threatening to Harry. After what? So in book 1, nerdy do-gooder Tessa Young, who loves her long skirts and her 19th century English novelist, goes to college. At the time of entering college, Tessa has a boyfriend who is 1 year her junior, named Noah. She and her mom, Carol, don't get along even though they're very similar, judgmental, bitchy, boring. She's attending Washington State University, which is in Pullman, Washington. She's also from Washington as well. We don't know where. It's a couple hours away from Pullman, and it says that she's never been anywhere else. Upon moving in, Tessa, her mom, and Noah meet Tessa's new roommate, Steph, as well as her friends Niall and Harry. And they all have tattoos and piercings, and Tessa and her family and Noah's family are very suburban, very quaint, and this is not something that they're used to. Tessa's mom is so disgusted, she doesn't even want her living with these punks, and she wants Tessa to go request a new room. But Tessa wants to have some control over her life for once, so she says no, she's just gonna stick it out, and maybe it'll open her up to some new experiences. And what do you know? It surely does. As she's living with Steph for the first few days, she gets to know her friend Harry, who is mean as f*** and super rude, and he's always talking shit about her outfits and nagging her. It's like a fairy tale. Just a party, and she gets super drunk for the first time ever, and she starts hooking up with him when she realizes that he also likes 19th century English novels. But then things end kind of aggressively and violently. And to make things worse, Tessa's only friend, Liam, is soon to be stepbrothers with this evil freak. They end up having a literature class together, and they have this big public argument, and then Harry tries to make amends by spending some time with her alone in the woods. So he takes her out to this ravine and gives her her first ever sexual experience. And then she just remembers that she has a boyfriend, Noah, and she feels so guilty that she invites Noah out there to Pullman and even takes him to the same ravine that she cheated on him at to try to feel something with him. But the sparks just aren't there, and she just can't stay away from Harry. And then that night, Liam ends up calling her, and he tells her that Harry's at the house, and he's freaking out, and he's asking for her. And this is a really quick rundown, but I want you to please remember that this is happening as fast as it sounds. They've known each other for 3 or 4 days. She goes there, and she finds Harry wasted and destroying everything, and she and him fight and scream at each other, and it ends up with a hookup and a sleepover, and she forgets about Noah again, and she tries to go running back there in the morning when she wakes up, but it's too late. Noah leaves, she and Harry fight, make up, she gets another chance from Noah, she and Harry fight, make up, make out, and get caught by Liam. And then this is when we find out that Harry has these vicious recurring night terrors that only Tessa can save him from. And just when things are going great meaning she's cheating and not getting caught, Harry goes and deletes these text messages she gets from Noah on her phone, which leads to this ambush scene where Noah and her mom show up at the dorms and catch her hooking up with Harry. They fight, make up, fight. She goes on a date with Zayn. They make up, fight, make up, and then she gets cut off by her mom because she catches her still seeing Harry. So she moves to an apartment off campus with him, and this is a luxury apartment that Harry's paying for because he makes 6 figures and an internship. But please don't get me started on that. That's not why we're here today. She has sex for the first time and then finds the bloody sheets in his trunk afterwards. She starts an internship at a job that Harry / his dad helped her get, and then he just vanishes for a few days. And then he comes back, and she's feeling a little suspicious about him now, so she reads some texts on his phone. She doesn't really understand what it means, and then she ends up confessing to it because the guilt is eating her alive, and he gets so pissed off about this, and he just leaves, and she gets really impatient, and she leaves the house and goes looking for him, and she sees Niall's car parked outside of this bar that they always go to, and then the book ends. But if you saw my last video, then you know that I read a little bit ahead so that I could finish the story off. And this is the last time I'm gonna promo the first video, but I did give an Emmy-nominated performance of the big twist ending. To make a bet. No. You knew! And that is the big twist in which they revealed to her that everything in the relationship with Harry the whole time was a part of his effort to win a bet for her virginity with another character, Zayn, that they made way back in the first week of school. He showed them the used condom, the bloody sheets, and detailed to them every single time he got closer and closer to the finish line, and pretty much utterly humiliated her after seeing her cut off every real person from her life. The end. So if you're unfamiliar with the format of my last after video, I'm now going to go through the second book in its entirety, and then I will move on to talking about the movie. So once again, use the chapters if you feel so inclined. But right now, let's get into the book. Tessa goes running out of the bar in tears, and the knight in shining armor, Zayn, chases her outside and offers her a ride. She's just dying to get away at this point, so she says yes, but only on the condition that he tells her everything that happened and how they got to this point. So then we get a flashback sequence to the beginning of the semester. Molly's talking shit and she's wondering why this prudish nerd that Steph is rooming with has to come to their awesome party. And Harry suggests that she probably acts like a bitch because she hasn't been properly. And this sets off a light bulb in his head. He would be perfect for the job of her right. In fact, he bets Zayn that out of the two of them, he could sleep with her first, and he would do so within the next month. So Zayn says if he can make that happen within a month, he'll give him $500. Jace also doesn't believe he can do it, so he adds on $300, bringing the total to $800. So if Harry can sleep with the nerd within the next month, he collects the jackpot. It's not clear whether or not Zayn is also competing for the same amount from Harry, or if his interference is just to be sure that Harry doesn't win it so he doesn't have to give him the money. But the point is, $800. And, you know, Harry's not that type of guy. He's not in it for the money. He's never slept with a virgin, though, so he is pretty stoked about that. And all of this information is utterly jaw-dropping for Tessa. She's shook to the core of her toms, and she starts to realize that he told them everything. He told them about her first time, about her first beach, about the lake, about literally everything. Zayn drops her off at her only friend in the world, Liam's house, and while she's there telling him everything, the man of the hour arrives. Harry's grabbing on her and being like, please, baby, you don't understand. But Tessa says she will never speak to him again. Liam tries to get between them so he'll stop touching her, and this leads Harry to punch a hole in the drywall, which of course wakes up Ken, Harry's dad, Liam's stepfather, owner of the house, chancellor of the university. Ken comes out and asks Tessa if she wants Harry there, and she says no, so Ken tells him to hit the pavement, effectively choosing Tessa over his own son. And he says, quote, I've been very happy with how our relationship has been evolving lately, son, but you have to go. Whatever you did to her, I hope it was worth losing the only good thing you had going for you. And the comments on Wattpad are like, yes, Ken, this is so true. But let's be real. This isn't the first time he's done this. More on that later. But he's unfortunately got lots of things going for him. No matter how horrible and reprehensible and hard to work with he is, the doors just keep on opening for him. Or should I say, keep being opened. It's actually a really good commentary on, like, privilege and nepotism. If anything, he's in a fraternity, he's got connections by blood, and he's got multiple sex crimes under his belt. He's more similar to successful men in America than anyone else. He could probably be president or something with this trajectory. Harry gives up at this point and leaves, and Tessa starts apologizing to everyone for bringing all this drama to the house. And Ken says, without you, there's nothing to come between. And I want to kind of open a dialogue here about the Harry character and the Ken character and the psychology behind their relationship. So the relationship that he's been developing with his dad this whole time is simply to please Tessa, right? We can all agree on that. Let's be honest, he's not doing this because he wants a relationship with his dad or wants to forgive him, but to fulfill this fantasy that Tessa has of having a dad who wants to be there and is clean and sober. I personally can't imagine going from having no relationship with a parent to having some rando come into my life for a couple months and convincing me to open that relationship back up just because she wants me to, right? I just feel like the character is weird and everyone acts like it's a good thing that he's making up with his dad, but everyone, including his own dad, knows that this relationship only exists because of Tessa. And I do know that this is less to do with intentional writing and more to do with just bad writing. So speaking of that, if you remember the last book, you'll remember that around this point, it said that Christmas was about a week away. So we were effectively retconned to December. And in this part, it said that 3 months ago, she was dating Noah. And according to my calendar, that was the very end of August, so I can let that slide. And I guess I'll tell you now that I have toiled over this and I made a very detailed calendar tracking the timeline of this book and the first one. So I will not be taking any corrections on my timeline. And if you think I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but no, you are wrong. It's not that I'm misreading things. The timeline just doesn't make sense sometimes, which is the entire reason why I made the calendars. But anyway, she thinks to herself that only 3 months ago, everything was so easy and simple and perfect even. And I had Noah and I had a relationship with my mom. But it wasn't. She didn't love Noah, obviously. And she constantly complained about how judgmental her mom was. And the literal second another guy came into her range of view, she was thirstier than a furry dog on a hot, hot day in the sun. And she doesn't end up going to sleep that night, she just lays in bed thinking, and then in the morning she goes to Walmart to buy clothes and makeup to wear to her internship because she really doesn't want to go back to Harry's apartment. While she's at work, Vance comes into her office and tells her that she's doing a great job, and he invites her to go to this conference the upcoming weekend in Seattle so he can network for the Vance Publishing expansion. And because she looks so ill and ghastly, he tells her to go home early and get some sleep. And on her way out, Kim tells her that Harry has been non-stop calling and screaming at her to let him talk to her. So, yay. Once she leaves work, she absolutely breaks down and she calls her mom on her phone, which she shouldn't have because it was just established a couple of seconds ago that she didn't have this phone on her, but whatever. And her mom knows as soon as she answers the phone and hears her crying, she's like, what did he do? Everyone in the comments wants to hate on her, and yeah, she's a bitch, but she was right about him, was she not? Like, maybe not in the exact ways that she thought she would be, but I don't think Tessa would disagree with the fact that he did, as of right now, ruin her life. He made a bet to sleep with her, and it ruined her relationship that she'd been in since high school, and burned the bridge with her mom over it. Harry's blowing up her phone, and she just turns it off and heads straight to her mom's to stay for the night. And once she gets over there, her mom's asking her what happened, and she keeps it so vague as a way of, like, protecting Harry's reputation to her mom. And I'm gonna bring this up again, probably, but even though it wasn't Anna Todd's intention, the way she acts in this book is textbook abuse victim behavior. But this is the super vague-ass conversation she and her mom have. He didn't turn out to be who I thought he was. And who'd you think he was? Someone who loved me? And now you don't think he does? No, I know he doesn't. What makes you so sure? I trusted him and he betrayed me in a terrible way. Talk about burying the lead! And then her mom, a notorious bitch, is like, I told you should have thought this through before you moved in with him. And she immediately is like, you know what would make you feel better? Getting back together with Noah. And Tessa's like, me not being with Harry anymore doesn't suddenly make me into Noah again. And then her mom says, sometimes it isn't about love, it's about stability and security. To which Tessa reminds her that she is literally 18 years old. And then here's a quote. Almost 19. If you don't be careful now, no one will want you. Now go fix your makeup because Noah will be here in any minute. So, wow. Noah shows up and Tessa trusts him, so she tells him literally everything. And he's like, of course this would happen, Tessa. He is scum. You're too good for him. And after he leaves, Tessa goes to this little greenhouse in the back of her house. And this was the place that she would always run to when her parents were fighting. And this was her whole thing. It used to be really beautiful and alive. And now it's all dead and dusty. And Tessa thinks that it's kind of a reflection of herself. And you might be thinking, wow, that's a super blatant metaphor, but I get it. It'll probably be a theme for the rest of the book. And no, it literally will never come back. She spends the night there, and then the next day while her mom's at work, she heads back to Pullman. She wants to just go in and grab her stuff from the apartment, so she circles the lot over and over and over again to see if Harry's there, and he isn't. So she goes in and starts packing, and then in comes Harry with another woman. And for some reason when I was reading this, I just kept seeing Jen Bunny. And she doesn't have a name, so I'm just gonna call her Jen Bunny. Harry's so excited, he's got his hopes all up that she's there to take him back, and he sends Jen Bunny into the hallway, and Tessa's like, oh wow, you move on fast. He's like, no, you stupid she's my coworker, is that really how you think of me? He's doing a really good job at getting taken back, by the way. So they start arguing, and she's like, I'm not falling for your tricks again, so you might as well stop trying to explain yourself. And she's pissed. She tells him she knows all about how he told his friends about their sex lives. And he's like, I really do love you. I don't want to see you move on. And he tells her that when he would tell them about stuff that they did, he wasn't actually telling them what they really did. He would make stuff up because I couldn't do that to you, even in the beginning. And maybe it's just me, but that's only at best marginally better, and only even arguably better at all. Like, it doesn't really make a difference to the people you're telling because they don't know what is the truth either way. You know, like, they weren't there. So either way, they're taking your word for it, whether it's really true or not. And I just know that it's gonna be him being like, yeah, she gave me a blowjob and then we did doggy. But really, he just fingered her in the mirror and then they had missionary sex. So he takes a break on trying to explain that and starts gaslighting her a bit. But that doesn't work. And then he says that when he tried to tell Niall and Louis about the stream incident, he got so jealous about them even knowing about what he, quote, did to her, that he, quote again, told them, you gave me, well, I just made shit up. That's exactly what I was thinking when he originally said that he was making shit up. Because he made it more than what they did. And you could argue that, like, more and less sexual stuff is all subjective. But in my opinion, it's worse than telling them the truth. Because the reason you didn't tell them is either A, because it's not as interesting or cool, and B, it's not as close to winning the bet as what you actually did. I'm sorry, I just really had to get that off my chest because the comments were like, oh, that's actually kind of sweet that he made that up. Like, no, it's not! He says he wanted to take her virginity because he loves her, and she says he should have thought about that when he was bragging about his conquest, and he screams, I'm not gonna be screaming, but just imagine that I am. Are you serious? You are not a conquest of mine. You are everything to me. You are my breath, my pain, my heart, my light. So they're yelling and arguing, and while this is happening, he grabs her neck and pulls her in and forces a kiss on her, and she tries to pull away, and he grabs her wrist. Like, what the is happening right now? She pulls away, and she goes to leave, and she's like, my mom and Noah are waiting for me outside. And this next chapter, chapter 106, was missed, I guess, when she was going through and searching for the names and switching them out, so it still says all the One Direction names, if you want to go back and look at it. And there's so many comments that are so confused about the names and have no idea that this story is originally a One Direction fanfic, which is so insane to me. And a lot of people are like, ew, I can't imagine Harry Styles, I only ever imagine Hero. And I get that he's like in the movies, so when people go back and read these after seeing the movies, they're imagining him. But it's just so weird to me. So Tessa leaves the apartment, she goes and cries in her car, and then she goes to go stay at this nice motel that's really close to Vance. And she says that she's never stayed at a hotel before. And later she says she's never left Washington. Damn. And who else would she run into at the motel but Trevor? He helps her carry her stuff into her room, and then they hang out and chat a little bit. He asks if he should beat it since Harry doesn't like him, and she tells him that she and Harry aren't seeing each other anymore. And then we get some background info on Trevor. He's from Ohio, and his senior year of high school, his mom got really sick, and she made him promise to her that he wouldn't die in that town too. And then the day that she died was the same day that he got into WSU. So they order a pizza, and then Trevor shares some college stories, and Tessa's all like jealous of him, and she's like, that's the college experience I should have had. She legit just finished her first semester. She's still a freshman. And then, the mark of after 2 and all of the following books, we start seeing Harry's point of view. Everyone in the comments goes absolutely gaga for this every time, but I hate it. Even though the first book isn't good at all, it has that quality of suspense that makes you want to keep reading it because you want to see how Tessa's gonna like navigate the next situation and what his crazy ass is gonna do next. Then she decides to abandon that and make one of the antagonists of the first book the other protagonist of this book. And it's like, okay, why do I care anymore? Because in the first book, you're like, oh my god, he's such an asshole, he's so mysterious, we don't know anything about him. But now we're literally reading his thoughts, and they truly don't make up for anything. Like, it's not a misunderstanding, he's bad at expressing how he feels. He just is an asshole. He does controlling things because he just likes doing controlling things. And the worst part is, I know that this only happened because it's a Harry Styles fanfic, and so the reason that people are coming is for Harry Styles. So when he and our main character are at odds, people are taking the antagonist's side against the main character. So she had to go and make the antagonist the other main character of the book now. And like I said, it doesn't lend itself to any type of character development. He makes no effort to change except in really, really stupid, menial ways. Like his inner monologue at the end of the book is just as controlling as it is in this chapter. But anyway, the book will continue to bounce back and forth which complicates my storytelling a bit, but we'll see what I can do. So Harry goes to Ken's house looking for Tessa. He says she isn't there, he throws a tantrum and breaks all of their plates. We also get to, experience one of his nightmares in the beginning of the next chapter. When Tessa tries to leave for work, her car won't start, so she gets a ride from Trevor in his fancy car. And then when she tries to leave work, would you guess what happens? Harry's just standing there in the parking lot staring angrily, and when Tessa says that he gave her a ride because they were staying at the same hotel, he literally grips Trevor up by his suit. He's a maniac. They aren't together. She should not have to explain literally anything to him. In fact, she should have just kept walking and not even looked at him. And then Harry tells Trevor that Tessa doesn't need a ride, and she leaves with him. Once again, textbook. In the car, he instantly becomes another person because he got his way. He's like, oh, baby, I'm so glad you're with me. I can't believe you stayed at a hotel. Why didn't you take the apartment? I'll just sleep at the frat house. And then when she says no, he switches right back to being pissed and tells her to stop being so difficult. This is the romantic lead. Let's be completely realistic right now. The only reason why a person like her would be attracted to him at this point in this relationship is because of daddy issues. She wants someone who's mean to her because she never saw healthy love modeled for her by her parents or whatever, the psychiatrist. But that's literally it. The sex cannot possibly be that good. So he drops her off at the motel. They go right up in front of the office and start having a screaming match outside the door.
I hope you get an illness and they get hit by a car and die. You're such a dick.
And she gives him this snappy little monologue and he starts shaking and leaves. The next morning is Friday, aka the day Tessa's supposed to go on the work trip to Seattle. But when she gets outside, she realizes that in the mess of yesterday, she completely forgot to call to get someone to come work on her car. And even worse, the car's not even there. So she goes to the front office, and the guy at the desk says that the guy that she was there with yesterday with the tattoos had it towed. But don't get down, Vance and the gang pull up only a moment later in a town car because you-know-who called them and told them that Tessa needed a ride. So on the way there, she's talking to Kimberly, Vance's girlfriend. She's like, we have to go to the club tonight. Vance can get you in anywhere. And you gotta wear that dress that you're wearing right now because you look so sexy in that dress. Please remember this dress. The dress is described as black and blue and hugs her curves. And it's apparently the most gob-stopping, sexy yet modest dress in the entire world. So they get to the hotel for this digital publishing conference, which is the Four Seasons, by the way. Meanwhile, Harry is riding around with our good old friend Jace. You know, the one he originally made the bet with, the one he always tries to pass off to Tessa as a total loser skis, which he might be. But I think at some point Harry's gonna have to acknowledge that if he hangs out with him, acts like him, and will literally betray the woman that he so say loves for him, then he might just be a loser too. Jace tells him that Zane's having a party at his place tonight, so they head over there, and he goes and does shots with Molly. Back in Seattle, Tessa and the gang wrap up their conference, and they head out to the club. Everyone is gagging at her bodacious, curvy body in her blue and black dress, and when they order drinks, Kim gets her a sex on the beach. And maybe I'm a prude or something, but I find it kind of weird that they're buying her liquor at the club on a work trip. And she's 18 years old. If this was a family friend type situation, I wouldn't think it was weird. But I do think it's inappropriate as her boss, and she's a new intern. But I would've wanted it. Harry's back at Zane's doing shots with Molly, and she tries to make a move on him as she usually does when he and Tessa are on and off. Please allow me to remind you of the time that he dared her to kiss him during a game of Truth or Dare. But this time he gets really physically aggressive with her when he's rejecting her, so she spills the beans that she and Jace were the ones who came up with the idea to reveal the bet in front of everyone. And this is when it just starts getting really nasty. Jace starts saying that he's gonna get with Tessa next, and Harry starts kicking his ass, and then Louis and Zane have to literally pull him off of him, and he's like, if anyone else has anything to say about her, I won't hesitate to repeat what just happened. And we're supposed to think that this is really awesome. Back in Seattle, at this point, Tessa is wasted. She's had 5 sex on the beaches, and she drunk calls Harry. He's like, Tessa, are you drinking? Where are you? Who are you with? And he starts getting really pissed off and jealous. He's genuinely the most insufferable character I've ever read in my entire life. And I've read Catcher in the Rye. And she just hangs up on him and heads back to the dance floor, and she starts dancing with some random person and making out with him, which is fine. And then he asks her to go back to his place with him, and she gets really offended. And she's like, why would you think I'm the type of person that would do that? But they all leave the club, and she goes back to her hotel room, and she passes out fully clothed, face down on her bed. the second she gets there. Hours later, she's woken up to a banging on the door, and she wakes up immediately scared that Harry is there. But luckily for her, it's just Trevor. Apparently in the car, their phones got switched up. I keep forgetting to mention this, but it's like a whole thing in the book that Tessa has a dinosaur phone, because this was still in that awkward phase where like not everyone had an iPhone yet, and some people were literally still using flip phones and sliding phones. Like not everyone even had a touchscreen phone at this time. But like Tessa's character and Trevor both didn't have smartphones. They both had these super old phones. But their phones get switched in the limo, and he was gonna just wait until the morning to say anything, but her phone's been ringing non-stop all night. And she's like, oh my god, thank you, I'm so sorry. And as she's thanking him, there's another bang at the door. And can you guess who it is? He comes in like a bat out of hell and tries to fight Trevor, and Tessa gets between them and tells Trevor to leave. And in, I guess, part effort to calm Harry and part her own leftover horniness from the club, Tessa starts telling him, what if I did hook up with Trevor? What if I let him touch me all over? And then she tells him, she's like, fuck me or leave. And I want to first say, I think having any type of real discourse about this is so pointless, in the same way that arguing about whether or not their relationship is abusive is pointless, in that Anna Todd intentionally makes it very gray, which it isn't. Like, I know it isn't, you know it is, but Anna Todd tries to write it so that it's like, oh, well, they're both kind of to blame, like they're both toxic, like they both blah, blah, blah. But in this specific situation, she tries to make this gray area, but it's like, outside looking in, objectively, he's obviously abusive, and she only likes him because she has severe daddy issues. And she is wasted drunk. She's someone that does not ever drink. She had like 6 cocktails, and she's wasted. And he knows that she's wasted. She literally just woke up from like a drunk, passed out sleep. But Anna will write things in from Tessa's perspective that are like, well, I actually did really want to have sex with him. And she's telling him like, oh, you either have sex with me or you get out of my hotel room. So it's like she's also being weird and coercive. Like, you get what I'm saying? She intentionally muddles it up so that you can't call Harry a freak, which I gladly will do anyway. And it just pisses me off because like the comments are trying to be so Switzerland about it. They're like, well, to be fair, they are both super drunk. And no. Actually, no. Tessa had at least 5 cocktails, probably 6, and Harry had 3 shots and then drove across the entire state. He is sober. And from his perspective, you know, he doesn't want to take advantage of her. And from Tessa's perspective, she really does want to have sex with him because she misses him. So from this point, the rest of this chapter is a really, really long, painful to read sex scene. And then the next chapter is also mostly a sex scene from both of their POVs. And this chapter specifically is a perfect example of Harry's point of view, making it so much worse to read. Like, he's giving her a hickey, and the whole time he's thinking, I need to do this so that Trevor sees it and knows what's mine. And then as they, like, arrive, he's like, say I'm the only one, say you only want me, say I'm the only one for you. And then after this, she passes out, like, immediately, and he still wants to talk about the fight, but she's asleep. The next morning, she wakes up and she's horrified. She tells him that, like, she was blacked out and she doesn't really remember it, and that everything's a blur, from hooking up with him to kissing that guy at the bar. Oops. And he flips the fuck out after hearing that she kissed some guy, and he's like, oh yeah, well, I had sex with Molly. And because Tessa's an idiot with nothing but hollow sounds in her skull, she believes him, and she just walks away, and she goes downstairs to the conference, and then afterwards she goes to dinner with Trevor. And Harry's driving back to Pullman, and he's having these super expositional thoughts about how he doesn't want to go to England for Christmas without Tessa, so his mom's gonna come there instead. And then he goes and stops at Ken's house to ask Liam for advice, and Liam tells him, in his opinion, Tessa should never talk to him again. But as Harry's brother and Tessa's friend, he'll try to talk to her for him. And he reminds her that tomorrow is Tessa's birthday, which it isn't. Her birthday's Monday the 20th. But I don't think that was written as Liam forgetting the date. I think that was just you-know-who not keeping track of the timeline. Back in Seattle, Tessa's at dinner with Trevor, and he's like geeking out about math, and she starts geeking out about reading, and she starts talking about how fiction is the only good type of book and the only valid type of story, which is a super weird stance to have. The date goes well, or so Trevor thinks, because he tries to lay the Mac on her afterwards, but she rejects him and things get super awkward. And then the next day, Sunday, Tessa and Kim have this girls' day. Not a single thing of note happens. Then they go back to Pullman. Tessa's car is back at the motel with a Nook in the back seat, and it has all the books that she and Harry ever talked about downloaded on it. A Nook, by the way, is this defunct e-reader that Barnes & Noble used to sell, and then the Kindle came out and kind of like completely washed it out of existence. But they were actually really cool. They had like paper texture that you read with, so it wasn't like a blue light screen. I kind of want one. Then Monday's Tessa's birthday. She calls her mom and lies that she's sick, so she can't come over to whatever town that they live in, and she invites Liam over to the hotel where they just sit and watch movies all day. He talks to her about Harry like he promised him he would. And this always annoys me so much because Tessa will be like, I can't be with him anymore. He's ruined my life. I cry every day. He humiliated me in front of everyone I know. And here comes fucking Liam like, oh, but he really does love you. And him loving her has absolutely nothing to do with her. She does, unfortunately, somehow love him too. But Liam doesn't know that, and it's not her responsibility to love him, like him, or even give him a chance just because he likes her. And I hate the insinuation that it is. The next day is the day that Harry was supposed to leave to go to England, but as we remember from his expositional thoughts, his mom is gonna come there instead, but Tessa doesn't know that, so she plans on staying there instead of the motel while he's gone. So, while she's there, Harry shows up with a woman. Yeah, they did this exact same, like, fake out twice in this same book. I don't know why. And it literally has the exact same play out. Tessa thinks it's another woman and starts getting on his ass about moving on so fast. And then she's like, oh my god, wait, it's his mom. And then Harry reveals to Tessa that he hasn't told his mom about the breakup because she couldn't bear it. And so Tessa agrees to go along with his lie to make her happy. At this point, everything just gets so awkward. They both don't know how to talk to each other. She's being all nice with his mom and decides that it's just too much to be playing pretend with him. So she packs up her bags and she decides to go to her mom's. But Anne, that's Harry's mom's name, in real life too, by the way, she comes in and she's like, oh no, you're leaving? I wanted to meet the girl that my son loves. And that's all it takes. Tessa decides to stay. And every time Harry tries to talk to her, he's all scared and his voice is trembling and he's on the verge of tears. And Tessa's stupid ass is like, wow, we're really getting along right now. Then the three of them all watch 50 First Dates. I'm realizing in my notes that I wrote 50 Shades of Grey, which is not what they watched. Harry makes dinner, they eat, it's awkward. Afterwards, she asks why he's being so nice. He says that he doesn't want to say the wrong thing, which, by the way, isn't a good answer. Babe, if I don't hold my tongue to the point where I'm a completely different person, I'll be mean to you. And then he asks why she's being so nice, and she says that she doesn't have the energy to be mad at him anymore, which basically tells him that, it's not because she wants to get back together with him, it's just because she's literally exhausted from everything, and is just being cordial at this point. And this pisses him off so much, he starts breaking plates, and then runs off to the bedroom, and she follows him in there, and he's sobbing. He tells her he can't be there with her anymore and she just needs to leave. He can't even bear the sight of her. And she's like, no, I don't want to leave. And he stops crying and just gives her pillows like, oh, okay, here you go. You take the bed, I'll take the floor. And the comments love that he cries in front of her. They think it's like the biggest step for mankind in the way of true love. So they're going to bed. They start doing that late at night, dark room, slumber party, talking thing. And he reveals to her that he didn't actually sleep with Molly and he just said it to hurt her feelings. Shocking. And then he's like, so, what about you? Were you lying to hurt me too? Which is a nice try. And she's like, no, I really hooked up with that guy. And then he goes back to being pissed off and jealous. The next morning, after Tessa wakes up, she goes and eavesdrops on Harry and Anne's conversation, and she hears Anne mention that this is the first conversation that they've had in years where he didn't curse her out. Tessa heads out to her mom's house, and if you have any type of pattern recognition skills, then you know there's not enough content there on its own, so she has to invite Noah over. So while she and Noah are chatting, he accidentally spills the beans that Tessa's mom has been super stressed over some drama with her dad. Now, quick recap on her dad. He was an alcoholic who physically abused her mom and ran out when she was 9 years old, and Tessa has not heard one thing from him since then. So she's like, my dad? What happened with my dad? And she runs into her mom's room and demands to know what happened. And her mom says it's not that big of a deal. He moved back to Washington, close to Pullman, but he will not be contacting her. Tessa's super pissed off by this because she says it's not for her to decide whether she knows about him or whatever. And Tessa's mom does not care. She just wants to go shopping. And Tessa's like, how can you shop at a time like this? And her mom says that he hasn't been around and he simply will still not be around. So there's not really any difference and there's no reason to get mad. Tessa gets super pissed off and leaves. And we get this gem. I wasted all this time coming here. 2 hours of driving in the snow just to have her be a complete witch. No. Bitch. She is a complete bitch. Honestly, one of the biggest bitches ever. So she drives back to Pullman and she calls Harry crying and he's like, what did she do? Which, remember, is exactly what her mom said when she called her crying about Harry. Also, this chapter, Anna Todd wrote the songs that she was listening to while writing this. And because she just like Command F'd the word Harry and changed them all to Harden, it says on here, one of the songs is Don't Let Me Go by Harden. Don't let me go. They embrace. She starts telling Harry about how her mom was hiding her dad from her. And he wants to be on her side because he will do anything but change to win her back. So he's like, oh, wait, isn't your dad an addict? Tessa's like, oh, well, what if he changed like your dad? And on the inside, Harry's thinking like, you know, wishful thinking. I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. But he tells her, maybe. And Tessa's just really glad that she can count on Harry being there for her today. He and Anne had plans to go shopping that day, but he says that since she's there now, she'll just stay. She's like, no, just go. And he's like, no, you shouldn't be alone right now. And she's like, no, just go. And he's already getting aggro with her. He's like, Tessa, what did I just say? And this makes Tessa think to herself, he's been so gentle, so afraid lately. It's nice to see that he's still himself. Let me fix that. It's nice to see that literally the only thing separating him from the person who betrayed me and embarrassed the fuck out of me is an elaborate ruse. And he's still the exact same asshole in there, just pretending. Tessa makes lasagna from scratch in like 30 minutes or something. Anna Todd is clearly not a guidette. They make it back home and Anne tells a story about seeing someone get tackled trying to steal from Macy's at the mall. They go to bed, Harry has a nightmare. Tessa tells him to come to bed with her. The next morning he wakes up and he's being very short with her and he tells her he has to go to work. And she just can't help but remember that the last time he said this, he was out doing bet stuff. So Tessa just spends the day with Anne. They start talking about Harry's nightmares, and when Tessa tells her that she knows the story of why he has them, Anne breaks down in tears, and she's like, wow, he must really love you to tell you that story. And then they go get haircuts. Then when they get back, Harry's still in a mood, and there's some unimportant bickering, and he admits that the reason that he's acting weird is because he went and asked Liam for advice. Y'all, this book is so much more boring than the first one. Then Tessa gets a call from Liam, who says that his mom wanted to ask Tessa to invite Harry and his mom to Ken's for Christmas. I'll say that one more time. Ken's new wife told her son to call his friend who's dating her husband's son so he can ask her to ask his son and his estranged ex-wife to their Christmas dinner. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Tessa and Harry run to the mall to go get presents to give them. None of this is important. While they're there, she runs into Steph and Tristan at the mall food court, and she's very cold to them. Steph is all confused, and Tessa tries to ignore her, and then she gets all snippy with her. And Steph tells her it's kind of bullshit for her to forgive Harry and hold a grudge against her when it was him who did the bet. And Tessa's like, I don't know what I'm doing! And then Steph starts telling her about that party that happened while she was in Seattle and about how Harry rejected Molly and fought Jace. And Tessa's like, happy to hear this. Then a bunch of unimportant bullshit that literally never becomes important happens. Later on, Tessa asks Harry why he fought Jace, and he says, because Jace is a loser and not his friend. Whatever helps you sleep at night. And then finally they try to actually like have a real talk. Tessa says they can't just pretend like nothing happened and go back to how they were, and they need to talk. And then he tries flipping the blame on her for not letting him talk when he ambushed her uninvited at her work trip in Seattle. They have the worst conversation ever, and it's supposed to be so adult, but it makes me violently angry. So he starts out by saying he wanted to fight Jace because he was going to try to hook up with her, because the sheer thought of her being with him sent a chill down his spine. And then Harry says that if he had the chance to go back, he would do everything the same way, because if it weren't for the bet, they wouldn't be together. Let that sink in for a second. It really is so clear that he doesn't understand why what he did was wrong, because he'll be like, everything was fine, and then they had to go and tell you about the bet. Yeah, because you weren't going to. He begs for forgiveness, and she wants him to promise that he won't hurt her again, and he thinks he's so profound because he's like, I can't make that promise because I will hurt you again, and you'll hurt me. That's just how we are. And this whole conversation takes place over the course of 2 chapters. And by the end of that second chapter, they have this exact same exchange again, where she's like, promise you won't hurt me. And he says, I won't, I promise. And part of my brain tried to like rationalize this because the way Wattpad works and like the way she was uploading it at the time was that ideally chapters would be uploaded at regular intervals. So like say every week or something, but usually there was like a lot of time in between the chapters. So I was like, well, maybe she wrote that chapter and then took a couple weeks and like didn't go back and reread the last chapter. So she accidentally wrote that same conversation that she thought about in her head and like she accidentally wrote twice. But this was a double update. These 2 chapters were posted on the same day, and she still couldn't get it together. And Tessa keeps saying that, oh, they'll try it again, but we'll just take it slow this time. And then she says that she wants to just go right back to how they were, so not slow at all. But the moral of this story is that pretending to be together brought them back together. Every single time in these books, the way that they get back together after these huge blowout, massive fights is always so anticlimactic, and they just get back together so easily for how much time it took for them to get back together. It just takes me out of the book. And like, I don't know if this sounds like a high thought or something, but it feels like she's not a character with autonomy. Like, it's so evident to me that it's like written that way because there's an author who wants that to be the thing that happens in the book, you know? Like, there's no sensible motivations anywhere for any of the characters. It's like, it's very obvious that they're doing it because Anna wants that to happen. You know, like, does that make sense? Like, think about Grease. It's kind of the same shit. It's like, nice girl dating a bad boy who doesn't want to claim her at first because he's really embarrassed of her and she's super dorky. And some of his friends like her and some of her friends, like, hate her and want to push her out because she doesn't fit in. But the whole reason that Sandy liked Danny was because of how sweet he was when they're together. Which is a problem in its own right, but it creates that motivation for Sandy to fall for him in the first place and then have the rug pulled out from under her. Or here's a better example, She's All That, which is kind of exactly like this plot with the bet and stuff. She doesn't like guys like Zach, he doesn't like girls like Lainey. But against all odds, they actually end up falling for each other, and then he has to tell her about the bet which he made with his terrible friends.
My bet? Am I a bet? Am I a fucking bet?
But the reason that she falls for him is because she sees that he's more than what she thought he was. He's sweet to her, he's nice to her nerdy brother, he's kind of romantic, he isn't afraid to embarrass himself to like do the things that she likes. Honestly, it's crazy right now how much I enjoy talking about these things more than after. But then more unimportant stuff happens. Oh, Tessa spills the beans that she met Ken's new wife, aka Karen, and Anne reveals that she also has a man and she's dating her neighbor. But this won't be important until the next book, so just like store that away. And then, for their little movie night that night, they watch The Green Mile. And then they like smush from Harry's POV, which is just worse than reading the already horrible sex scenes that are from her point of view. The next day is Christmas Eve, and Tessa wakes up to a call from her mom, and she tells her she doesn't want to come home from Christmas. And then Harry starts talking really loud so that her mom can hear him in the background. And she's like, what is he doing there? I can't believe you, Tessa. And Tessa just hangs up on her and like turns her phone off. And she's kind of annoyed at Harry because that's not how she wanted her mom to find that out. And he doesn't care at all. He's like, oh, she was gonna find out anyway. And then they go to the living room to open presents since Tessa's gonna be at Ken's tomorrow for Christmas. Which, when Anne finds this out, she's like, oh yeah, we'll go too, even though Harry already told him no. Also, in this scene, Tessa's wearing sweatpants, which Harry insisted that she do. And this is groundbreaking for her. She's like, I always had to wear my Sunday best with my mom. Baby, just dress yourself. So they open presents. Tessa opens a charm bracelet that's like written from Anne. And it's got a music note, a book, and then a heart charm. And on the book charm, it's engraved and it says, whatever souls are made of, his and mine are the same. And she just knows that this present's from Harry and she starts crying and she climbs into his lap and is embracing him. And not to dig too deeply into a quote, but it just objectively isn't true. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that Tessa and Harry are fundamentally very, very different people. There's nothing about their souls that is remotely the same. But this book, and the movies too, want to sell you so hard on this idea that like, they're the same person, just like, they got spun into like different paths, but like, deep down they're like, they are the same. No, they're not! No, they aren't! Like, in what way? They are the same, like, no, they're not! Like, stop, like, you're trying to convince. But after they open all their presents, they go take a nap, which is just a plot device so they can be woken up by Tessa's mom storming in. She's super pissed off. She wants Tessa to come with her. She can't believe that she's back with Harry. And let's be clear, she is right. She's also a bad person, clearly, and has done damage to Tessa that she probably got from her mom. Let's keep it real. But in this scene, she's just trying to snap her daughter out of this hypnosis of what is clearly an abusive relationship. Like, she is right. But Anne, who doesn't know anything, is like, okay, lady, you gotta go. You're doing too much. And so Tessa's mom spills the beans, and she tells Anne about the bet and everything. Which, if you remember, Tessa did not tell her mom, but she did tell Noah. And I don't know why she trusted him in the first place, considering he has done nothing but go behind her back and snitch to her mom about literally everything this entire time. And Anne is shocked and disgusted, and she immediately takes Carol's side and tells Tessa that she should leave because there were others. Harry has done this several times before. In fact, it's the entire reason why he moved to America in the first place. If his own mom is taking his side and saying you should leave, you really gotta leave. A single boy mom is telling you you should leave her son? Listen to her. Because if there's one thing a boy mom will do, it's take his side. Tessa continues to defend Harry. She literally hides behind him in this part. I don't know, this whole scene is so bad. Her mom starts taking low blows. She tells her she should stop clinging to Harry and she doesn't have to have a man. And Tessa gets like really, really unclassy and it's like, no wonder dad used to slap you around. And I know there are people who are like, I'll say anything when I'm mad, or like, when I'm mad, I'm gonna say whatever I think will hurt you the most. And I don't know, I think resolve that within yourself. I personally think that it's really telling to the kind of person that you are when you're in an argument with a victim of physical abuse and you say, no wonder you got abused. Like, I'm supposed to be on her side. The girl who's currently playing Shield Maiden for this freak who humiliated her in front of quite literally everyone she knows. I'm supposed to be on her side. Harry is physically holding Tessa back and covering her mouth so that she can't talk anymore. Harry and Tessa's mom go into the living room together where they have this controlling, emotional abuser final boss battle. It's one of the single worst pieces of writing I've ever read in my life, so I'll spare you. But I will give you a little taste. Also, by the way, this is being told from Harry's perspective. This is all your fault. You've brainwashed her. She doesn't think for herself anymore. I know what you're doing. I've been with men like you. I knew you were trouble since the day I laid eyes on you. I should have had Tessa change rooms and then prevented all of this. No man is gonna want her after this, after you. Look at you. That's the point, isn't it? That no man will want her. No man but me. She will never be with anyone but me. She will always choose me over you. Over anyone. You are the devil, and I'm not gonna just go away. She is my daughter, and she's too good for you. I'll make sure to remember that when I'm burying myself into your daughter tonight. As the words leave my lips, she gasps and reaches her hand up in an attempt to smack me. I grab her wrist and push it back down gently. I would never hurt her or any woman, but I wasn't gonna allow her to assault me. I give her my best smile before I walk back into the apartment and slam the door in her face. Anne's absolutely devastated at this point. She's sobbing, crying, because she cannot believe what a monster her son is. Tessa overhears Harry monologuing to his mom about how Tessa's different from the other girls, and he doesn't see her as a worthless whole. He actually cares about her. And he ends with this line. She is my ultimate sin, and I will gladly be damned for her. So Anne leaves to give them some privacy, and Tessa comes out and she's like, you actually think that? And he says yes, and she's like, okay, well, I want to know everything. And he's like, okay, but promise you'll understand. But what is there to understand? You're a freak. So he starts his story, and he's like, well, back in England, I used to have this group of friends. They were all Jace types. It is absolutely insane how he will blame Jace for every single horrible decision he makes, even decisions he made before he knew Jace. It's like, they were Jace types. It seems like your friends back home and your friends you've made here are all losers. You're a loser. So he and his loser friends, who were all Jace types and not Harry types, would all have this game where they would pick each other girls and see who could f their girl first. And then whoever won got the hottest chick next week. Tessa asks how many weeks they did this for, and he says only 5 weeks before the incident. 3 weeks in, one of the boys named James thought another boy named Martin was lying, so he came up with the idea of having photographic and video evidence. You know, like I think you probably see where this is going. Week 5 comes around, Harry commits sex crimes, and when his friend watches the tape, he decides that he wants to get with her too. When she rejects him, he spreads the tape around. Her parents, who are big in the church community, see the video, kick her out, and she loses her university scholarship. So Tessa's thinking to herself about how he ruined her life and how she feels so bad for her. And then she says, "You're gonna want to sit down for this one. I thought you'd never been with a virgin before." But don't worry, you don't have to feel bad for this stupid skank anymore, because Harry tells her that she wasn't a virgin. She'd slept with a few guys already, which basically makes her worthless used parts. Tessa asks what happens afterward, and he says she told him she fell in love with him and asked if she could stay with him while she figured out her life since her parents had kicked her out and she lost literally everything because of him. And he said no. At this point, Tessa's disgusted, and she's like, "You literally ruined her life, and you wouldn't let her stay with you." And he says he just didn't care. And she's like, "Well, where is she now?" And he says, "I don't know, I just didn't care." And then Tessa starts to notice all the similarities between herself and this girl, losing their families, being betrayed by Harry, ultimately still being in love with him after you lose everything because you were betrayed by him. So Tessa asks how many other girls he recorded, and he says just Natalie. Before he came to America. If you'll remember, he also did this to Dan's sister, which I believe I mentioned in my last video as a part of the book before, which is all of the events of the first book told from Harry's perspective, and it was coming out alongside after 2. But the video with Dan's sister didn't get shown to anyone, he deleted it, but made sure Dan knew. Then he tells her that he doesn't even really know why he did it. Dan said to leave her alone when he first brought her around them, and then he was like, "I want to her just to piss him off." And then he says, "He's a dick anyway, Tessa." Because you can't forget, Dan's sister is not a human being. She only exists in relation to Dan. And Tessa's astonished. She's like, "You don't even really care or feel bad. You only feel bad about her finding out." Which is exactly true. And I'm very glad that she at least acknowledges this. And he says, "She's right. He doesn't care. And he doesn't care about anyone else but her." And then he's gonna say, "That's my past. Let it stay in the past." How can it be your past when you just got caught doing it to her a week ago? Tessa's like, "I don't know what you think this is, if you think this is normal, but this is just too much for me, and I have to go. I don't even know who you are." He says, "That's my past. You know me. Tessa, baby, don't let this ruin us." Tessa says she just wants to leave, and he says no, and then he leaves instead, and he's like, "Just remember I love you, and I've changed." And let's get this clear, the only reason he's leaving and not her is because he wants to know where she is, which will be the apartment. He does not ever change, like he's never going to change, ever. He stays this same exact character throughout all the books. So Tessa sits around for like 15 minutes, and she's thinking about Natalie, and she feels jealous of Natalie. She feels jealous of every girl he's ever been with. And then she just instantly decides that she's gonna forgive him. This part is so stupid. It's also a fan favorite part of the series. His mom gets home first. Tessa tells her that she wants to forgive him, but she also wants space. They eat dinner together. 3 hours or so pass. Tessa calls Harry back to the house, and then he gives her this letter. I'm not going to read the entire thing but it allegedly contains every single indiscretion that he can remember. It starts with things like him throwing a baseball through a window and being a bully in 3rd grade, which is also the last time he told his mom he loved her. He describes a story of his first time having sex at 14 years old with his friend's sister who was 17 years old, and he calls her a whore. He starts smoking weed, he gets in fights, he hooks up with a lot of easy girls. Sounds like someone else might be a little easy, eh? At 18, he meets this guy named James, and they're just exactly alike. Whatever his soul is made of, theirs are the same or whatever. Then he hooks up with some random girl and she falls in love with him, so he just starts telling everyone that her Cooter Bronson stinks, and then she's like ridiculed by everyone. Then the Natalie thing happens. Then he gets arrested while he's drunk one night and his mom didn't bail him out. Then he moves to America, he meets Steph and the rest of their group. He hooks up with Steph. Remember this? He committed sex crimes against Dan's sister. He meets Tessa, hooks up with Molly, imagines it's Tessa. And in the note, he even writes that like while he was driving away from the apartment, he was thinking about Natalie, and he still didn't feel bad. But then he imagined Tessa in her place and had to pull over because he almost vomited. This is our love interest. You're supposed to think that this is sweet. He loves her, blah, blah, blah. Then he says he went on a date with some girl that looked like Tessa the night he drove to Seattle, which It does not make any sense with the timeline that we're given, but we'll ignore that for right now. Tessa reads this whole note twice, and she says it makes her love him even more. He shows back up at the house, and she tells him that she had already decided to forgive him before the letter. So, once again, they're back together. The next day, of course, is Christmas. Everyone's dressed up, Harry's wearing jeans, they go to Ken's house, everything's going pretty well, Ken and Anne are catching up. During dinner, Harry offhandedly mentions that he plans on moving back to England after graduation, which Tessa does not know about, so save that for later. Then they go in the living room to open presents. This is when everything takes a left turn. Karen offers Anne and Tessa a glass of wine from their wine cellar. This is the home of an ex-alcoholic with enough wine to fill a cellar. But either way, they're all having a fun, classy time, and then Harry starts instigating and asks Ken if he would like a glass. Ken just tries to ignore him, but that doesn't stop Harry, and eventually they start having a full-blown argument. Ken tells Harry that that night haunts him to this day, and he has not had a sip of alcohol in years. And Harry's like, haunts you? I watched it happen. And then he starts talking about how his dad never sent him and his mom any money, which his dad says he actually did every single month. And Anne confirms that that is how she's paying for college for him right now, which there's no way a chancellor's son would have to pay full price tuition. Let's be serious for 1 second, please. But at this point, Harry just wants a fight, so that's exactly what he does. He hits Ken with a mean right hook and breaks their china cabinet. Tessa tries to intervene and break them up, and Harry accidentally knocks her down. Everyone is disgusted and horrified at everything that's just happened. Harry grabs Tessa by the waist and he's like, we're leaving! Don't fuck with me, fellas! And they drive home in silence. At home, Tessa cleans and dresses his wounds, and his mom manages to convince him to apologize to Tessa, and he tells her that he's so sorry, he just had to defend his mom. Then he third bases Tessa in the shower. After this, Tessa wants to have another adult conversation about how he wants to move to England, but let's be real here, that's not happening. He's like, well, you'll just come with me because you love me and you can't live without me. And she tells him that she's always dreamed of living in Seattle, and he says he hasn't and he's not American, so why would he live there? So they end this conversation, coming to no conclusion. The next morning, Harry gives Anne a ride to the airport, and they decide to invite Ken, Karen, and Liam over to their apartment for a redo of Christmas. Right before dinner, Tessa runs to their local grocery store to pick up some stuff, and while she's there, she meets a young man who rides a motorcycle. Remember him for later. At dinner, everything goes all right. Liam and Tessa carry the conversation the entire night by themselves. They talk about their identical schedules, their new teachers, and then they open presents. This is where everything went wrong last time. But everything goes great, mostly. Harry is pissed that they also got Tessa a charm bracelet, a Tiffany's charm bracelet. But for some reason, neither of them can conceive of wearing 2 charm bracelets at once, so Tessa's like, I just won't wear that one because I already have one. Tessa gets Liam hockey tickets for Christmas, and Harry agrees to go with him. This will also be important later. The next day, Tessa goes back to work, and I want you to guess which of these things happens. A, she goes to lunch with Trevor. Famously a no-no for her insane boyfriend. B, she and Harry have a screaming match fight in the lobby of the office. Or C, she and Harry have sex in her office. Trick question, the answer is D, all of the above. She goes to lunch with Trevor, they get back from lunch, Harry sees them. I feel like I'm having a fucking Groundhog Day moment. It's just the same exact plot keeps happening over and over and over again. He gets super aggressive with Trevor. He and Tessa have a scream fight in the middle of the office, the literal lobby where everyone can hear. They take it to her office, and she accidentally mentions her and Trevor going to dinner when they were in Seattle. And the thing that's the most annoying to me about these fights is she'll be like, I was just having lunch with a coworker, it's not like anything happened. And he'll be like, sure. At this point, I would be like, yeah, actually, we had sex in the booth at Panera, and then I had sex with every single employee at Panera. So she agrees to tell him, and he starts flipping it all on her, and he's trying to say that she was so mad about his literal sex crimes that span multiple continents, but she's not Little Miss Perfect. She went on a date while they were broken up. He repeatedly filmed underage girls without consent and spread the videos around to the point where, to his knowledge, it ruined one of their lives. And wouldn't you guess that the comments on Wattpad are like, he actually has a point though. He's actually kind of right. Like, she isn't Little Miss Perfect. She is kind of like judging him. Then she's like, I'm sorry. I should have just stayed away from him. Let me make it up to you. Aunt Flo is in town. Okay? So he takes her tampon out and throws it in her office waste paper bin, and they do the do on her office desk, and as he arrives, he says, don't go near him again. Oh yeah, and then she leaves work early. She totally deserves this job, right? Like, there's a 3-day time jump written here, but it's technically 4 days since it's Friday, but it's New Year's Eve now, is the point. Harry is 45 minutes late for picking her up for work, and he says it's because he fell asleep. And you may think that this is gonna, like, come back, that he was doing something, but I don't think it does. I think it's just there for no reason. Then they go shopping for New Year's, which is a whole scene that no one cares about. And Tessa buys this gold dress with 3/4 sleeves. And they go to a party at the frat house for New Year's. They say hi to the gang. They run into Molly. And Tessa is so obsessed with her literally the entire night. She cannot stop thinking about her. She can't keep her eyes off of her all night or stop thinking about how little clothes she's wearing. Harry runs off and disappears and orders Tessa to stay put in the living room. So naturally she doesn't. And she and Steph wander off and go play beer pong. Steph teams up with her boyfriend Tristan, but whoever will play with Tessa? Enter the love triangle, Zane. Oh yeah, also Tessa doesn't like beer, so they play it with cherry vodka sour mix instead. And they play a couple games. So at this point, Tessa is drunk. Zane wants to step out to go get some air, and Tessa follows. They talk, and she notices that he has, like, Sanoderm for a new tattoo under his shirt, and he pulls it up and shows it to her, and it's, like, skin peeled back, and there's gears underneath, and it's supposed to look like a robot underneath it, and she's like, whose? Like, whose robot? I don't know how he understood what the question was, but she's like, whose robot? And he says, society's. And then Harry pulls up super sinister and villainy and starts arguing with Zane for trying to be alone with Tessa while she's drunk. And Tessa tries to stand up to him, but that doesn't work because it never does, so she just resorts to being super horny. They go back inside with the group and everyone's super bored. They can't decide what to do, if they should go out, if they should stay and make the party better, and Tessa suggests that they play Truth or Dare. She gets dared by, oh yeah, Ed Sheeran? Red-haired Ed character? Definitely supposed to be Ed Sheeran. She gets dared by him to take a shot. See, this is the type of stuff you missed out on if you only watch the movies of these books. Like, you'd never know that Ed Sheeran made an appearance. So Tessa asks Molly truth or dare. She says truth. Tessa says, is it true you're a whore? And everyone cheers and laughs and applauds. Then Molly asks Tessa. She says dare, and Molly dares her to kiss Zane. Harry's like, no, she's not doing that. And so Molly asks her a truth. And she says, is it true you're a dumbass for getting back together with Harry after you for a bet? Tessa says, no. And Molly says, it is. You're a dumbass for it. You believe anything that comes out of his mouth. Not that I blame you, because I know the amazing things that mouth can do. Man. Tessa jumps on top of her, grabs her by her hair, and slams her head into the ground. Harry pulls her off of her and carries her to the kitchen, and she's like, I'm gonna kill her, and very intimidatingly says, I hate her so much, like who the hell does she think she is? So they go to Harry's old room upstairs and have a really weird sex scene. After they leave the room, this pretty girl comes over and gives Harry his phone that he'd left in a room upstairs earlier, and he thanks her and asks her not to tell anyone where they were together. And she says, I don't kiss and tell. And Tessa overhears this. So buckle up, a lot is about to happen. And this is a perfect example of how Anna Todd tries to write Tessa in a way to be like, see, they're both in the wrong. Tessa runs off. Harry realizes that she had overheard and chases her. She grabs some random guy and kisses him. Harry literally blacks out and beats him bloody. They go outside, they have this huge screaming match. She finds out that the girl that Harry was talking to was Dan's sister, and he was apologizing to her, and kiss and tell is a figure of speech. He says, F you, and leaves her out in the cold in her ugly ass gold dress. From his point of view, he's like, if she doesn't call me within an hour, then she probably left with someone else. Which is so weird how he dated her because he's like, she's a virgin and she's never been with anyone and she's scared to do anything. But every single time anything happens, he's like, oh, she's such a slut. She's probably hooking up with 9 other guys right now. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, who do you think she is? Meanwhile, she stands outside thinking he's about to circle back for like 10 minutes. And then she goes inside to get another drink, where she runs into Zane. They talk for a minute. He says the usual, you're too good for him, he's blah, 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 blah. She asks if he would ever forgive someone for kissing someone else right in front of him. And he says, never. And then Tessa explains that it was actually her that did the kissing and not Harry. So he offers to give her a ride home and they leave. When they get to the apartment, Tessa says she doesn't have a key. So she just stands in the hallway and bangs on the door and begs Harry to let her in, but he does not answer. As soon as they start to walk away, Harry comes out just plastered and he's like, well, look what we have here. And he's having this villainous monologue and he invites Zayn in to come have drinks. And Zayn goes in. And from this point, it just all gets so weird. Harry's like, I'm the only person Tessa will ever have sex with. And Tessa just tells Zayn to leave. I don't know what's happening here. I'm not explaining it badly. Like, this is just what happens in the book and it's not good. Harry starts breaking liquor bottles, starts breaking plates, breaking everything, breaking vases. Tessa begs him to forgive her for kissing that guy. He keeps yelling. He raises his hand in the air and she thinks he's gonna hit her. And he's like, what? I would never hit you. And then he gets pissed off all over again and calls her a spoiled, snobby little bitch. So Tessa runs off and locks herself in the bedroom and hides in the closet and starts reading his note that he wrote to her over and over again while he is pounding on the door for like an hour. This is a legitimately horrifying situation. Like, the only solution I can think of to this is a trank dart in the fucking neck. The next morning when she wakes up and leaves the room, all the mess is cleaned up and there's a note from Harry saying that he'll be right. He shows back up and he's got replacements for all the stuff he broke. They apologize to each other, they kiss, and everything's just dandy again. Tessa asks how things went with Dan's sister at the party, and conveniently, she just didn't even care. Like, she barely even remembered that it even happened. Then they have another weird sex scene where they both, like, pleasure themselves at each other. And he's, like, teaching her. And afterwards, she's super stressed out about school. And she mentions Liam. And Harry says, maybe I need to teach him too. Step bro. So now it is the first day of the second semester of school, aka January. And Tessa really wants to make a good first impression with her teachers. So she wears a white bodycon dress and her tallest heels. They are in Washington State in January. Do you know what Washington State looks like in January? And for reference, this is how she dressed at the beginning of the first semester. This is the only type of character development we get in these books. She meets Liam for coffee, and then they go to their world religions class, where the teacher is the motorcycle guy from the grocery store. His name is Professor Soto. And also he's super chill and he's not like other professors. He doesn't even have a syllabus. They just have to show up every week and do these journal prompts that they will only find out if they come into class. This whole situation really stresses Tess out because she likes to get all of her assignments done in advance, but she'll just have to make do here. Then she goes to her PE class, which is yoga. And then there's this whole part where she doesn't have a lock for her locker and she borrows one from some girl. And it does not come back, at least in this book. I do not know why it's included. Like, this girl better come back in the next book. Like, it does not make any sense for her to be in here if this person does not play a big role in the next book. I don't remember her coming back. But then Tessa starts getting harassed by some lacrosse player, and Harry comes to her rescue and tells the guy that he will And if you're wondering why Harry's here, he reveals that he also enrolled in her yoga class so that they could have a class together. But there's one small problem. These two are the horniest bastards in the universe, and they cannot be normal people in a class like this. Also, this girl that sits next to Harry, and Tessa gets like really pissed off and daydreams about physically assaulting her. Again, this is just Anna Todd trying to like shoehorn in their souls are made of the same thing, even though they've never been similar for these entire books. He starts talking about having a boner in the middle of meditation. Everyone around them is shushing. They leave and go home. This is another part where the details do not matter. Like, I do not know what was going on in Anna Todd's mind when she was writing this. But they go home, the heater's broken, they call maintenance, and then while they're waiting for maintenance to show up, they have a quickie, and then the maintenance guy gets there and he starts looking at Tessa, and Harry's feeling all territorial. I don't know. Later that night, Kimberly calls Tessa and asks if she can watch Smith, Vance's son, for the night. She accepts, and Harry's not too stoked about this. He says that it's all gonna be her responsibility because he really just does not like kids. friends. But as soon as Smith gets there, he only likes Harry and doesn't even talk to Tessa. At some point, Smith asks Harry if Tessa is his wife, and he says no, and she never will be, or something to that effect. Tessa overhears this, and her whole world is shattered. She instantly is devastated, and will from this point on refer to this as him saying he doesn't see a future with her, which just is not what he said at all. Not even close, not even the same sentiment. The next day at work, she talks to Trevor and she learns that he is moving to Seattle in a matter of weeks to work at the new Vance location. This is so sad because she knows that Harry won't go to Seattle with her and he doesn't want a future with her, so she just can't win. This is also the same night that Harry and Liam go to that hockey game, so while he's gone, Tessa runs out to the grocery store to get a few things, and who else would she run into but Professor Soto? And we learn some more info about him here. He is in a band. He is 22. That's younger than me. I'm 23. And he wants Tessa to come to his gig tonight and bring all of her friends so they can pack the room and get invited back. Tessa thinks this sounds fun and right up her friend's alley, so she invites Steph. So much unimportant stuff happens, but basically it ends up being Tessa, Steph, Tristan, Niall, Zane, and then Zane's new girl, Rebecca, at the show. I'm 90% sure also that this character is based on Rebecca Ferguson, who Zane dated when he was on X Factor. The hockey game ends and Harry calls Tessa and finds out she's at some bar. He gets super pissed, so he and Liam show up at the bar. Now remember, no one that knows Harry except for Tessa and Liam know that his dad is the Chancellor, meaning that they do not know that Liam is his stepbrother. So it will make no sense when they show up together. Tessa talks to Zane's new girl and finds out she's in high school, which she thinks is weird, but she's the exact same age as Noah, so. Once the band takes the stage, their name, by the way, The Reckless Few. Worst band name I've ever heard. Liam realizes that this is their teacher, and he is so shocked. He's like, what a crazy coincidence that our teacher's band would happen to be at the same club that Tessa's at. And Harry is pissed because he instantly realizes this is not a coincidence. And remember, one would only ever want to speak to Tessa to sleep with her. That's why he does it after all. There's this whole weird exchange where Rebecca thinks Tessa and Zane are exes, and then Zane asks Tessa if she likes Rebecca because he thought she was jealous of her. I don't know, it's all stupid. After the show ends, Soto comes over to talk to Tessa, and Harry interrupts and it gets really weird as per usual. And for the first time in this entire series, someone finally reacts to him like a normal person. Do you see your students outside of the classroom often? Oh, so you're that type then. What type is that? The jealous type. No, I'm the type that makes sure nothing happens to her. You're a little overboard, don't you think? We should go. You don't want to do this. Trust me. I'm not doing anything. Thanks for coming, Miss Young. I'll see you in class tomorrow. He handled it so calmly, like, would you not be so embarrassed if you were, like, with someone who was being so intense, and then this other guy just responded so chill and calm? So Harry drags her outside, and he's like, oh my god, you know, stupid, you just made me look! Then the argument about Harry not wanting a future with her bubbles up to the surface, and he says he feels suffocated by this conversation. And I will say, worrying about marriage with your on-again, off-again boyfriend of 4 months at 19 is like, how about you make it one uninterrupted year of liking each other first? They're having this huge fight. Tessa lies to him and says that Vance offered her a job in Seattle, and he leaves. From his POV, he thinks that in Seattle it'll be really easy for Tessa to leave him, but in London, she won't know anyone, and he'll be in total control, making her essentially a prisoner in their relationship. Sick. Harry goes out to some bar to drink away his feelings, and the bartender is some girl he slept with before, and he's out all night. The next day at school in that world religions class, I use quotes because this class is very Christianity heavy for a world religion class, but today they're writing about the topic of faith, like, what if you die and your God wasn't the right one type thing as their prompt. Then Tessa skips her yoga class and she goes home. She still hasn't heard from Harry. He, meanwhile, is getting a ride home from the girl whose house he spent the night at, platonically, of course. And he texts Tessa a lie about how he slept in his car and is coming home right now. But of course, Tessa reads this text while she's driving and gets in a wreck, which Harry sees while he's driving. So he makes the girl stop the car and he runs over. He's like, oh my god, Tessa, are you okay? And at first she's talking to him, but then the girl walks up and she's like, okay, can I go to work? Like, do you have this handled? Can you walk the rest of the way? And you know what it looks like. Tessa's not trying to hear a word of what Harry has to say at this point, and she rides off in the ambulance without him. Harry goes and gets his car from the bar and finds her at the apartment, but her mom and Liam have already made it there to be at her side, and he is no match for how good of a person Liam is. Pretty much the only thing that happens while Tessa's mom and Liam are with her is that she finds out Noah has a new girlfriend and that his parents do not like her, and she kind of has a superiority complex about this because his parents always loved her. In order to stay away from Harry, she goes shopping with her mom, but she just cannot bear to go into Macy's because it brings back memories of shopping with Harry for New Year's. So she sits outside the store while her mom shops, and she runs into Rebecca. So they're chit-chatting for a while. Tessa's mom finishes at the store, and she's like, "Oh, perfect, you have a friend. You could just give Tessa a ride home then." And she leaves and goes home. But fortunately, Rebecca says yes, she and Zane, who's also at the mall shopping at Zoomies, can give her a ride home. Meanwhile, Harry's at the apartment and Liam shows up and gets all in his face and he is so pissed and he's like, "I can't believe you hurt Tessa again, you don't deserve her." Then while this is happening, Tessa and Zane show up and Harry starts shoving him and like Rebecca has to come in from the hallway and reveal herself so that Harry trusts that she and Zane weren't hooking up or something. Tessa says she can't keep doing this with him. Harry says she'll be back and doesn't even try to stop her from leaving, so she goes with Liam. They then go 9 days without talking, and it's this whole dramatic thing. Tessa isn't speaking, she isn't eating, she won't smile or laugh. Harry runs away to England and he's wasted for most of the trip. He runs into that girl Natalie who he committed crimes against, and she's living her best life. She's happily married and she's pregnant. She loves her life. And of course, nothing he did actually affected these women because great writing. Soto invites Tessa to another gig and she wants to bring Zane and she's having this whole dilemma. And it's like, you'd think that Harry and Zane are the last 2 men on Earth, the way that she's practically forcing herself to like the 2 of them. Like, she's actually mad at herself for not liking Zane. That's like, you don't have to like either of them. You can just be single for like 2 seconds. They go to Applebee's together before the gig, which according to Zane is his favorite restaurant. And Tessa asks him what would have happened if he had won the bet. And he starts painting this picture of the perfect relationship where he's always awesome and she's always happy and life rocks. And then she starts making out with him. But he gets kind of offended because he knows that he's just a rebound for her and she doesn't actually like him. And he's like, okay, well, I just want to wait and see if you actually like me and then we can kiss. And then Tessa's alone. She leaves this super desperate, sad, crying voicemail on Harry's phone. But don't worry, Harry can't listen to it because he broke his phone during his 9 days apart or whatever. Back in England, Harry's starting to get his life together at this point. He's having his nightmares again, except he's seeing Tessa in his mom's place now. And his mom tells him that he needs to go back to America and win Tessa back at this dinner party that Vance is having. So let's go to the dinner party. Tessa has no idea that he's coming. She's hanging out with Trevor. She's bored out of her mind while he's talking about moving to Seattle and whatever else he talks about. Harry shows up, he's super nervous, he talks himself out of bailing, and then as soon as he and Tessa make eye contact, she drops her wine glass on the floor and it shatters. He tries to run out, but he ends up running into Smith, Vance's kid, and he's like, "I hate these parties too, please don't leave." So his plan is to just ignore Tessa all night so that she'll think he doesn't love her anymore and she'll move on. Which he does. Eventually, Vance shocks the party by getting on one knee and proposing to Kimberly. And this triggers Tessa to run into the bathroom and start crying because she's obsessed with marrying her loser ex-boyfriend. And when she comes out, she starts eavesdropping on Harry and Smith. I don't know, I guess it's like he's still thinking about her. But she goes outside to catch her ride for the evening, which is none other than Zane. While she's outside waiting, of course, Harry comes out, he's being super cold and acting like he doesn't care at all, and he convinces Tessa so hard that she starts crying. In his internal dialogue, he thinks that he's Tom and she's Daisy, and he will corrupt her and ruin her forever, and she'll never be the same again, and she'll end up hating him and herself. Did Anna Todd misunderstand every classic novel that she's ever read? I actually cannot tell if she's genuinely misunderstanding these books or if she's trying to do some type of like off the beaten path alternative take on these books. Because Harry says, and I quote, "If Tom would have left Daisy at the first moment of her uncertainty, she could have a life with the man she was destined to be with. A man who would have treated her the way she deserved to be treated." Which is an insane way to interpret The Great Gatsby. Gatsby was in love with Daisy. We know this. He went to war. At this time, there was nothing for a woman to do, especially a woman from an old money family. So Daisy had to find a safe, compatible suitor. So she found Tom and she fell in love with him. Eventually, Gatsby strolls back into town and wants to change everything for Daisy, but she and Tom just are at this point. Do her and Tom have a passionate relationship? No. But to each other, they are a means to an end, and they're fine with that. Their status as a couple, the union of two old money families, is more important to both of them than real love ever could be. The metaphor of comparing Harry, Zane, and Tessa to Gatsby and Tom and Daisy just does not make sense. And it just, again, just like Pride and Prejudice in the first book, I feel like Anna Todd doesn't understand these books that she keeps referencing. It doesn't feel like she actually gets it. Harry is no Tom, and he's certainly not Gatsby. And this little character of not caring that he's playing fades away as soon as Zane pulls up. He starts freaking out and pacing around. He's like, "Are you seeing him? Get out of the car!" And Zane gets out of the car. A physical fight ensues. Tessa tries to break them up and gets hurt in the kerfuffle again, because Anna Todd can only think of like 3 scenarios to happen over and over in these books. Harry's apologizing. He says he didn't mean to. You know how I get when I'm angry, whatever that means. Zane swoops her away to his apartment to get cleaned up, and he brings her some fresh clothes to wear, including a pair of his boxers. And if you're wondering where his girlfriend is, she's in California on a ski trip with her family, and Tessa notes that Noah's family also goes on an annual ski trip around this time every year. I'm sorry, I don't want to keep harping on this, but I have to circle back. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to wear any man's underwear. Ever. She goes to sleep on his couch, and she has a wet dream about Harry, and wakes up in the middle of the night, and she's like, "Oh, this couch is too uncomfortable." So she goes and joins Zane in his sheetless bed. Stepping back in time to right after the fight first happened, Harry's perspective, Vance calms him down a little bit after the fight. He starts talking to Liam, and Liam spills the beans that Tessa and Zane have been hanging out a lot more lately. They went to that show, and they hung out all weekend. He made her laugh for the first time in that, 9-day period where she wasn't smiling. And you can imagine that Harry is not too pleased to hear this. So he goes to hang out with our old friend Jace in hopes of getting some more intel on Zane. But Jace says the entire friend group has just been on the rocks lately, and they haven't really hung out, and he doesn't really know anything. And Harry thinks he's withholding information, so he gets a little aggressive with him. And this scene feels like a mob movie to me. It takes itself way too seriously. But 4 o'clock in the morning comes around. Harry has no good info still, so he decides to just drive over to Zane's house and see if they're boinking himself. When he gets there, he pushes past Zane's roommate and barges into Zane's bedroom and sees Tessa and Zane laying together in the sheetless bed. Goes absolutely ballistic at this point, loses his mind. He tells Tessa to shut the up. Zane says he's gonna call the cops on him for just showing up in his apartment. Tessa jumps out of bed to spring into action, but Harry sees that she's wearing his boxers. He's just convinced that they smushed at this point. They're having this huge, violent fight. Zane still wants to call the cops, but Tessa wants to protect Harry. So she leaves with him so that he'll stop. Then once again, in the spirit of after, there's a super anticlimactic resolution. They keep fighting and they can't agree on anything. He brings her to Ken's house where she talks to Liam for a little bit. She finds out that Liam's transferring schools to NYU to go live with Danielle. And this is really touching to her because she thinks about how Harry said he wouldn't move to Seattle for her. And it's just salt in the wound. But it's like, just go. You've been dating for 4 months out of your 19 years of life. You will survive without him. You will get over it. You will forget that he even existed. Jesus Christ. She goes to take a shower. Harry walks in. They start kissing. They have the same makeup conversation that they always have. "Don't hurt me again. We're doing this on my terms. We're taking it slow." Whatever. And everything's all better. At this point, we've been through 80 chapters of this book. Hardly anything of note has happened. At least not where it's supposed to happen in that story slope thing. Harry goes to ask Liam some advice on taking it slow. Liam asks if he's ever taken her on a date, and he hasn't. Not one single date. And Tessa's over here distraught that he won't marry her. He's never even taken her to dinner. So Liam tells him, not today, but soon he should ask her on a date and take it slow. Tessa, meanwhile, tells Liam that she still has plans to talk to Vance about transferring to Seattle, and she has lunch plans with Zane. Also, I just want you to know that every time that Tessa has that religion class, they get a new religion adjacent topic, and Tessa finds a way to connect it to her relationship with Harry. I haven't brought it up every time, but she does it every single time. She goes to lunch with Zane. He's an environmental science student, and he shows her these flowers that he genetically modified, and they glow neon colors. All of a sudden, this becomes a sci-fi novel. He tries to kiss her. She rejects him. It's really awkward, and he's so pathetic. He's like, I don't mind if you lead me on as long as you'll have me. And then after their yoga class, Harry asks her on the date, even though Liam explicitly said not today. This is his idea of taking it slow. An unspeakable amount of nothing happens for chapters and chapters. Harry keeps going to Liam for advice. Liam gets into NYU. Oh, Tessa tells Kimberly she wants to talk to Vance about moving to Seattle, and Kimberly tells her that Harry told Vance already that she didn't want to go and to not offer it to her because she felt bad saying no. Yeah, Kimberly, that sounds about right. She was too nervous to turn down a job offer. So Harry, you know, the one who was calling all day, screaming at you to talk to her, the guy who showed up and scream fighted with her at work, showed up at your party and got into a physical altercation outside. Yeah, that guy. He told you, Tessa, who famously loves Seattle, was too scared to turn down a promotion in her dream job. So she asked him to tell you not to offer her one. And you believed it! Every single character that Anna Todd writes in these stories is too stupid for their own good. Like, how do you dress yourself? Okay, they go on their stupid date. They're both all dressed up fancy because they're supposed to go to this fancy dinner. Harry also takes his eyebrow and his lip piercing out. He has an eyebrow and a lip piercing, by the way. Have I ever mentioned that? But when they get to the restaurant, the host says that there is no reservation. And I don't know what this is supposed to be. Like, did he actually not make the reservation? Did he make it for the wrong year? And he thinks to himself, oh, they can't see my tattoos, can they? And that is so Anna Todd coded. Like, what year is it? You think people working at fancy restaurants can't conceive that a rich person would have tattoos? And a lot of this chapter is that way. Like, when he takes his piercings out, he's like, no one would ever hire me with that shit in my face. Hello? Did Harry forget that he has a job that pays almost 6 figures and he works from home and publishers were fighting over him as is? And it's like the only reason that that's in there is because Anna Todd is accidentally revealing what she feels about tattoos and piercings in real life. Like, it comes back over and over again in these books. Anyone who has tattoos is always like, yeah, I'm just a stupid, irresponsible fuck. That's why I got these. But yeah, there's allegedly no reservation. So Harry gets super pissed off and then he decides to keep his cool to not scare Tessa. Again, not because he's changed in any way, but because he's trying to get her back. So they drive around to go find a new date idea, and Tessa sees this ice skating rink and says she wants to go do that. Then there's this pointless scene where they have to go shopping at Target for scarves and stuff to wear to go ice skating. And I feel like these books have so much attention to the stupidest details. Like, who cares about this? Who cares about Tessa cleaning the kitchen after dinner? And like, that time when Tessa borrowed a lock from that girl in yoga class. Like, why are there so many details about these things? Like, stop worrying about that and worry about this horrid timeline. They go ice skating, so sweet. After the date, he invites her to his birthday party at the frat house and she declines. When he's dropping her off, she invites her to come up to her room that she has at Ken's house. And he says no, even though he hasn't slept in 2 weeks because of his nightmares, because remember that Tessa's the only person that can save him from his nightmares. The next day is Harry's birthday. He has a birthday party at the frat house. Everyone is wasted by 8 p.m. He texts Tessa and she's super excited to hear from him. He says the party sucks and asks if he can come over. Tessa obviously says yes, he can come over, and he says he'll be there in 30 minutes. She gets all hyped up and her and Karen make this little birthday cake for him. She waits up and he never shows. Back at the party, from Harry's POV, Zane walks up and hands Harry his phone and says he left it on the couch. Harry checks his text and he's annoyed that Tessa never texted him back and he wants to leave, but Louis will not let him. Not before the strippers get here! Back at Ken's house, Tessa gives up on waiting for him and goes to sleep, and she's awoken by a call at midnight, but she does not answer. The next day is big for Tessa. Karen invites her on their family whale watching trip. At work, Vance tells her that they'd love to have her in Seattle and that they leave in 2 weeks. And her mom drops this bomb that the Rebecca who's dating Zane that she asked for a ride from at the mall is the same person that Noah is dating now. So Tessa's like, okay, I need to make plans and go talk to Zane and break the hard news to him. And when she shows up at Zane's, he's like, oh, what is it you wanted to talk to me about? Was it about the strippers? And ultimately, he doesn't even care at all about Rebecca because he only wants Tessa. I literally could not care less about this. Harry, meanwhile, is still confused why Tessa never responded to him. He's getting super insecure. He goes over to Ken's house and asks to stay for dinner in hopes that Tessa will show up. When she does show up, she's being really cold to him and he's super confused. And she asks if they can talk after. Harry starts to put the pieces together of what happened, but he realizes that he sounds insane saying it out loud because Tessa doesn't believe that Zane is evil. Which is crazy because it's like she forgot that he and Harry made the bet to take her virginity. Like, she forgot that Zane was also kind of vying for that prize too. They resolve this whole situation not with anything sensible, but because they're both like, I don't know how to go slow or how to give space, so they just kiss and make up. Then Tessa asks him about sabotaging Seattle, but she doesn't tell him that she actually did take the position there. So he's like, well, it's fine. They probably filled that position anyway, and if you'd taken the position, we wouldn't have made up, and there will be other positions that open up in other places, like London. Then he brings up how Niall told him that he saw Tessa going into the environmental sciences building, which is where Zane always is, and they end up coming to this agreement that if Tessa doesn't see Zane anymore, Harry won't try to fight him. But he asks if there's any other Zane stuff he should know about because from this point forward, he does not want to hear his name again. So, Tessa tells him about their kiss. I don't think I really need to say it, but they get in a huge fight. She says that he abandoned her and Zane was there for her, and he's like, what else did you do with him? Did you him? Did you And then he says, you abandoned me, and I found out you're flaunting around campus like a awesome. So Tessa just leaves the room to give him some space. So she's standing out in the hallway. He's in the room, starts breaking everything. Liam's like, oh, you need to go back in there and stop him. So she goes back in. They have their most aggressive fight yet, I think. He's walking toward her all menacingly, and he's like, if you know what's good for you, you'll leave. And this is the exchange that happens. You won't hurt me. You don't know that. I've done it before. Not purposely. You wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you did. I know that. Talk to me. I don't have anything to say to you. I don't want you. Yes, you do. No, Tessa, I don't want shit to do with you. He can have you. I don't want him. You obviously do. No, I only want you. Bullshit. Get out, Tess. No. Don't you have anything better to do? Go find Zane. Go f him for all I care. I'll do the same. Believe me, Tessa, I'll leave here and I'll every girl I lay my eyes on. She says he's just saying that and he doesn't mean it. And he says he doesn't even want to look at her. So she gets on her knees and begs for forgiveness. Then he's wiping her tears and telling her it's okay and that he doesn't know if he can get over this. She's like, oh, when will you know what you want to do? And he says he can't be without her. So she says, well, why don't we just be together? And then they hug, which turns into making out, which turns into her giving him a hand job. I don't know, guys. I don't know. He goes to Ken's room and steals a condom and they have sex. Afterwards, they, quote, lay around in their post-coital bliss. He opens Tessa's birthday present to him, which is the Fray's sophomore album, The Fray, a new binder for work, and an iPod since she learned about downloading music, and an old copy of Pride and Prejudice with a bunch of stuff highlighted in it. He loves it so much that he starts thinking to himself about when's the last time he got a birthday present. And that when he was younger, he always made it clear that he hated his birthday and he was always mean to his mom about whatever she got him. So by the time he was 16, he stopped getting presents from her. And then internal dialogue says his dad used to send checks every year, but he would burn them. And one year, he peed on it. In chapter 138, he was just bitching to his dad about how he never sent any money, but he was literally pissing on it and burning it. He asks her if she'll move back into the apartment. She says she wants to take it slow. She tries to talk about Seattle. He really doesn't want to. She goes to bed, and he reads his annotated book. The next day, Harry convinces Tessa to skip her morning classes and go to IHOP. On the way back to campus, he asks Tessa to play a voicemail on his phone from his mom, but the one that starts playing is the one where she's crying and sobbing and begging for forgiveness after she kissed Zane. Tessa gets dropped off at class, which is her world religion class, which every other day of the week is her first class of the day, so I don't know why we needed that whole skip your morning classes for IHOP thing, but whatever. But Harry's just seething. Listening to that voicemail just reignited his anger about her kissing Zayn and Zayn preying on her when she was all vulnerable. And he starts thinking violent thoughts. So he heads over to the environmental sciences building to start a fight. He shows up and he's like, "Are you really that stupid to mess with what's mine?" And when Zayn says, "You don't own her," Harry slams Zayn's face into a metal bar and breaks his nose. They break into a full fight. Harry's kind of surprised because Zayn's holding his own. He gets him good a few times. But Harry breaks all kinds of plants and gives Zayn a concussion. Zayn starts telling him that he and Tessa had sex and she was nice and tight. Some teacher comes in to try to break up the fight and Harry knocks him down. It is bad. It is bad. Tessa and Liam then get pulled out of class by Ken, who says Harry has been arrested. Back at the campus police station, Harry's acting like the most spoiled brat that's ever existed in the entire universe. I'm not sure if he was supposed to look cool and badass here, but this is exactly how I'd imagine a rich frat boy would act when he gets arrested, so it's actually pretty accurate. He's literally screaming at his dad. He's like, "Get me out! What's the point of you being here? Just pay the fine and tell them to let me go!" But it's just not gonna be that easy. He broke thousands of dollars worth of equipment, ruined semester-long projects that students were working on, knocked down a professor, and ultimately it's up to Zayn, who is now concussed and has a broken nose, to decide whether or not Harry will be criminally charged. And the provost, which is like the assistant chancellor, is telling Ken that he'll probably be expelled from the university. And this is kind of a wake-up call for Harry, who's been a whiny crybaby nightmare the entire time he's been in the cell. Meanwhile, Tessa goes to the hospital to find Zayn and ask him not to press charges. But after a little bit of talking and, calling out Rebecca for cheating, Zayn tells her he won't press charges as long as Tessa considers leaving him. So once they're all back together, Harry and Tessa drive back to the apartment and he's like, "Okay, choose once and for all, me or Zayn." Then she says there's no competition, it's obviously him. And then she agrees to move back in, so much for taking it slow, yesterday. But once they get home, Tessa isn't feeling well and she thinks she's getting sick. But when she eats, takes a nap, takes a bath, and then goes to the pediatrician and gets antibiotics, which I think really dates this book. But apparently over the course of this one day where she doesn't feel so well, like 1 month after her last period, we're supposed to be scared that she was pregnant. That did not cross my mind one single time when I was reading all of these scenes about her being sick. I was so bored and confused. And I didn't realize until she jokes about it and then he gets scared and then they start arguing over this hypothetical pregnancy. But they go pick up her antibiotic prescription and she runs into Soto at the pharmacy and he offers to be a character witness for Harry at the disciplinary board meeting to decide if he will get expelled. Because no one deserves to be expelled. Except, yeah, he does, okay? He should be expelled. It's crazy the accuracy Anna Todd is able to unintentionally put into this book. Rich kid just can't stop fucking up and self-sabotaging, but it's okay because there will literally always be people around to clean it up for him. It's truly magical. Tessa's one antibiotic pill kicks in instantly, and she goes to the mall to go help out Steph because she's meeting Tristan's family tonight, and she wants an outfit that makes her look a little bit more respectable. While they're out shopping, she finds out that Steph is transferring to LSU for their art program, and Tristan will be also moving with her to Baton Rouge because that's just what couples do. And then Tessa accidentally spills the beans about Ken, chancellor of the university, being Harry's dad. And Steph is so shocked and she thinks it's so funny that she's like, "Oh my god, I bet he's pissed at how Harry turned out." And Tessa instantly is on the defense. She's like, "Why? He hasn't turned out in a way that anyone should be upset about." Girl, they've known each other 18 times the length of time that you've known him. Let's calm down, it was just a joke. And he definitely should be at least a little bit ashamed of how he turned out. Because he's a horrible person. And Steph invites Tessa and Harry to come to her tattoo appointment tomorrow. While all this is happening, Harry's at Ken's house collecting all of Tessa's things, and he's being super aggro with his family as per usual. Ken tells him that it isn't healthy for him to isolate Tessa from everyone, and she should be able to talk to other people and be around other people, and it's not good for them to only talk to each other. But Harry doesn't want to hear any of this, and they get in an argument about this, and I can't tell if I'm supposed to be on Harry's side or not, because I'm not. I never am. But it seems like he's the protagonist now. Then Ken says that Harry reminds him of himself at that age, which pisses Harry off even more. And then when Tessa gets back to Ken's house, she starts telling Liam a story about when she was at Macy's and she saw someone shoplift and get tackled by security. Anna, you put this in the story already. Anne saw this exact same thing happen when she went to the mall. They make it back home and Anne tells a story about seeing someone get tackled trying to steal from Macy's at the mall. Another thing that I'm not sure if it's intentional, but I think if it was intentional, they should have done it 3 times. Rule of thirds, everyone knows that. All right, home stretch here. I know nothing has happened, but get ready because even less is about to happen. They go home, they have sex. Harry's scared about being expelled. Tessa tells him that she accepted the job in Seattle and he kind of doesn't believe her and he's like, you still have time to make your mind up. The next day, they go to the tattoo shop to meet Steph and Tristan, and the shop is on the wrong side of the tracks. A real shady neighborhood. Tessa's literally whimpering and scared. Steph gets her tattoo, Zane and Jace show up, and it's inconsequential because they just are like, fine, we'll leave while you are here. I don't know why they're there. Surely it'll come back in the next book. Harry ends up getting a tattoo too that says, I never wish to be parted from you from this day on. When they go outside to go to the car, this big dirty guy with a big beard that stinks like liquor stumbles up to them and Tessa's like, Dad? The end. I know what you're thinking. What? And believe me, I was thinking the same thing. The first book wasn't by any means good, but at least it had a pretty clear plot line that could be followed. This one, no such thing. Okay, now let's move along to the movie. As you remember from last time, the first movie follows a much different series of events than the book. One of the main reasons for that is that the movie was rated PG-13. Now, originally, Anna Todd sold the rights, and a screenplay was written by Susan McMartin. She's best known for her work on the Toni Braxton biopic. But Anna bought the right back from her because she didn't like her vision, and a new script was written by Tamara Chestnut. And this was the first ever screenplay she had written, but for the second movie, they reallocated their funds in a major way. Crew was much smaller. They brought in famous director Roger Kumble, who's best known for the movie Cruel Intentions, which was a huge inspiration for After, very clearly. It's a movie where these 2 freak step-siblings who are super horny for each other try to turn out the headmaster at their school's prude daughter. I'm sure you can see the similarities. But right now I'm going to do a very succinct overview of the first movie just to catch us up because I know remembering all these different storylines can be very confusing, if not impossible. First of all, Harry is Hardin, Liam is Landon, Zane is Zed, Tessa's still Tessa, Noah's still Noah, and Niall and Louis don't exist. Tessa goes to school in an unnamed place that's definitely Georgia, not Washington, and meets Rude Hardin. She says no to going to a party. Book Tessa would never. They make eye contact at the coffee shop. She says yes to a party where she plays Truth or Dare and is dared to kiss Hardin, but she doesn't. But then upstairs in his room, she almost does. They argue like weirdos in class.
The only reason he even asked her to marry him was because she wouldn't stop throwing herself at him.
He takes her to the lake and touches her belly. Only hours later, he's embarrassed to be seen with her, and they get into a fight. Montage. Her boyfriend surprises her, they go to the bonfire. Second blow goes awry. Hardin gets wasted, Tessa gets caught cheating. Montage. They get back together. Montage. This stupid scene.
What are you doing, Tessa? Learning about the stars.
Her mom shows up and cuts her off. She and Hardin start shacking up in one of his dad's professor friend's apartment while they're in Italy for the school year. Montage. Tessa gets suspicious because Molly tells her to be suspicious and she reads Hardin's texts. He storms out and doesn't come back home. His slimiest friend Jace tells her where to find him, and there they reveal that all along Hardin had dared himself to make her fall in love with him. Tessa gives them all crazy eyes and runs out in the rain. She goes home and makes up with her mom and her ex-boyfriend, and then on the last day of class, the professor gives her Hardin's paper and says it was actually written for her. And Tessa meets him back at the lake. The end. The next movie starts with an opening narration and a last week on After type montage, which they do in fact do in all of the movies. I guess they just assume that you have no idea what happened in the last movie, and to be fair, they're right. But as our opening narration winds down, we're kind of led to believe that the ending of the last movie where they're sitting on the dock wasn't what happened. In fact, this is only the beginning of a series of changes and retcons that happen in this movie and the following ones to kind of clean up the worst parts of the previous movies. So Hardin wakes up in his car by a railroad, and it looks like he's been living in his car or sleeping in it or something. It's got to-go boxes and bottles all over it. He gets out to pee, and some guy tries to talk to him, and he tells him,
Piss off!
Drone shot while he pees, title card. And the tone of this movie is instantly different. We start off with Tessa in the car with this comedic relief type Uber character who's talking about how the heat will make you do crazy things. Is this movie set in Georgia? In the books, we know Tessa's a Washington native and she moves 2 hours away from her hometown to Pullman, Washington, and she dreams of living in Seattle one day, which is just on the other end of the state. But here, it's December, and it's hot enough for the heat to make you do crazy things. I know for a fact that the movie was filmed there, but my question here is it set there? Or am I supposed to be suspending my disbelief and thinking that this is like a fictional town somewhere, maybe near Seattle? Or does the location not matter at all? I don't know. My point is, it makes some of the things make no sense, and you'll see that in a second. The office building she gets dropped off at is none other than Vance Publishing. The first face we see is Trevor, played by Dylan Sprouse, and he definitely gives the best performance of anyone in this movie, which isn't saying much. The elevator closes on Tessa and she yells, "Asswipe!" which leads to a very awkward elevator ride. It's her first day on the job as an intern, and in this movie, Kimberly is not only played by Caroline from Vampire Diaries, who you'll remember was a great inspiration to Tessa's character.
Don't turn your back on me!
I should have turned my back on you ages ago!
But she's also more than a receptionist. She's Tessa's boss or something? I don't know, but she's not a receptionist. She takes Tessa to her office, which is a wreck because they never keep an intern long enough to get settled into the office, because Vance always fires them, which is an awesome sign for any workplace. Tessa's happy to be there anyway, and she's somehow able to make all of the things in this room vaporize out of existence and have a clean office by the evening. At midnight, which we know thanks to her being on time.is, we see her reading her little heart out, but she falls asleep at her desk and sleeps through the whole night. She wakes up in the morning with the most vile, viscous glob of drool under her face, and Vance with his feet kicked up on her desk. He's impressed because she's already completed more than half of her week's assignments in just one night, and he tells her to grab her things and come with him. And in these movies, he's this like callous, aggressive guy.
Go back to your...
Get in.
Which I think is a weird change to make. In the books, he's just really normal and encouraging, nice even. I mean, I know why they did this, I just don't think that it was necessary. If it worked in the book, I don't think that it needed this for what will be revealed in a later movie to work. That sounds very cryptic if you haven't seen these movies or read these books, but it'll make sense in time. But she hops onto a limo bus with Trevor, Kim, and Vance, and they all go to a digital publishing conference. Meanwhile, Hardin's at a tattoo parlor where the artist offers him some liquor to help with the pain, and he tells her, I like the pain. Tessa checks into the hotel, but her room isn't ready, so they just upgrade her to the suite. How convenient. Vance then tells Kimberly to take his card and take Tessa shopping for some new clothes to wear. You know, since she slept at work and then got on a bus. Just somewhere. We cut to them getting Tessa ready when we learn, they forgot to buy her underwear. So Tessa has to go commando in this gold dress that's ugly as sin and these disgusting little booties. I've complained before about the wardrobe in the last movie. This one's no better. None of the budget was reallocated to these areas. Hardin gets back to the apartment and takes the Sanoderm off his tattoo, and something is definitely wrong here. Something unsanitary is happening on his tattoo. And this is one of the best scenes in the entire series, an Anna Todd cameo.
So what books have you written? Oh, this and that. Oh, this and that.
She had a cameo in the last movie, but this time she had a speaking role, which is just infinitely cooler. This part's boring. They drink with this businessman because Vance is trying to get in good with him so he'll invest in the company's expansion. They all pretend to drink from this big drink. I don't know why they chose to use clear straws. Back at school, Hardin's at a frat party where Steph and Tristan are doing body shots. Zane talks like a cartoon character.
Well, look at the cat dragged in.
And this party is where they really cash in that R rating.
Guess who? Okay, I'll give you a hint. She's super fucking hot, a lot of fun, and loves to fuck.
Mother Teresa.
I've had like no carbs in 8 weeks, but I'm feeling fucking fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, it's from the lack of carbs and not all the blow.
And then this happens.
Does she have some carpet to munch on?
Don't she have some dick to suck?
Back at the club, Tessa's dancing like she's rolling. I don't know what type of drink they were having, but she, and only she, is acting like this. She starts dancing with some guy, then she hallucinates that it's Hardin and she makes out with him, and then she runs off doing her crazy eyes thing. I'm just gonna hope that that's not a quirk of Josephine Langford's acting for her sake. I'll just assume that it's a result of bad direction. At the frat house, Molly's flirting with Hardin and she's like, I'm bad, but you love it. And he leans in like he's gonna kiss her, and then he goes, No, get the fuck off me. And then he shoves her to the ground. Is it just me or is this not okay? And it's not framed as though he's in the wrong, at least not the way I perceived it. I think I'm supposed to agree with his actions because I'm supposed to want him to get back together and I'm supposed to hate Molly because she doesn't like Tessa. But the truth is, I want him to stay away from Tessa. And I don't really like either of them. And he always acts like this with Molly usually, so how was she supposed to know that he had an overnight 360? But she yells some lame comebacks at him.
Let me guess, you're still moping over that stuck-up bitch.
He leaves, and then she says,
The fuck you looking at, freshman? You want me to steal your boyfriend? So turn the fuck around.
to the most 35-year-old looking group of people I've ever seen. Back at the club, we get what I assume to be their best attempts at acting drunk, but it reads more like Tommy Wiseau in The Room.
I look hot.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Tessa drunk calls Hardin for God knows what reason.
Hi, I just wanted to inform you that I look hot and you're missing it.
I don't know, again, if this is a problem with the acting or with the directing or the script or maybe all of the above, but I do know that this isn't good. This is very bad.
Hey, Hardin, I'm the commander. I've been the commander all night. Commander, what's it called?
Surely the people who shot the film and edited the film and viewed the film and watched the film all felt the same way, but maybe they just didn't care because they wanted to just sell the movie. I don't know. After she hangs up on Hardin, Trevor walks up and says,
I'm drunk, uncomfortable, and I saw a tampon on the ground. I'm leaving.
And Dylan Sprouse really is one of the only good parts of this movie, but it's like, he's not enough to carry an entire film on his back in which he's a secondary, if not tertiary character.
I want fresh fries and ice cream.
But then I immediately have to retract all of those praises because he does this. They go back to the hotel and have a little nightcap. Tessa asks what his favorite book is and then talks about how nonfiction books aren't real books because she's 8 years old. And then she hurls her napkin at him like an MLB fastball, spilling his wine all over his pants. I'm gonna be completely honest. At this point in the movie, the drunk performances were honestly making me a little bit irate.
I mean like fiction, like a real book.
As Tessa makes her coworker strip down in her hotel room so she can wash the wine stain out of his pants while wasted, Hardin arrives in unnamed metropolis. He bangs on the door, kicks the bathroom door in like he's Statham in Transporter, and says this entire series' most famous line,
Fucking Trevor!
And these two give the most unhinged performances. Their drunk acting is like a runaway train of chaos and mayhem.
You can't tell me who I can and can't have sex with because it's none of your business anymore.
It's uncanny. But just as in the book, kinda, Tessa starts coming on to him. And maybe I'm a hater, but I just cannot see how this scene is appealing to anyone.
All over my body. Either you fuck me or you leave. You decide.
Like, watching this, I was so intensely uncomfortable. I didn't even want to look at them. I felt like I shouldn't be there. I didn't want to be there. It's like they're mistaking passion for chaos and frenzy. Like, I don't even know what to make of this or how to describe it to you, but I'm sure you can see what I'm talking about. There's just something fundamentally different from this scene, and I guess the movie in general, and something like 50 Shades of Grey. And 50 Shades of Grey isn't even a great or good movie as far as movies go, but it's unarguably the blueprint for this type of shitty softcore movie. I went and watched just a little bit of 50 Shades of Grey, and somehow After manages to be worse. To be honest, going into this after watching After is like watching The Notebook or Casablanca or something. It really feels like a movie. Let's start off with the fact that Anastasia, who is kind of weird, kind of questionable in the acting department at times.
One of my mother's friends. I was 15.
She seduced you?
But above all that, likable, has her own friends, and most important to me at this moment right now, good at playing drunk when it's required.
Thanks, though, for the kind gesture.
There's a really similar scene to the one that we just watched in the first 50 Shades movie. It's just after she and Christian meet a few times, and he's like, I can't stay away from you, I want to protect you, and she's like, okay, whatever. And before she goes out to a bar with her friends, she opens a very extravagant gift from him. He sends her a bunch of fancy first edition novels with a little quote attached. And this alone, like nothing in After yet has been able to evoke this feeling of like, he knows her after such a short period of time, like he's looking into her, he's going the extra mile to get her attention, like this is very mysterious, what's he up to? Like it's just already giving me the exact feelings that I think I'm supposed to feel when I'm watching After. She goes out and gets drunk and ends up calling him to tell him that she's sending the gifts back. When Christian hears that she's drunk and out and about, he tells her, go home now. Obviously hideous and not aspirational, at least to me anyway. Let's be real. Jamie Dornan? Sexy. And I'm not knocking Hero Finds Tiffin at all. He's a handsome young lad, but I just don't think his demeanor in general supports the character that Hardin is supposed to be. Like, I understand that if you wrote down descriptors of Harry Styles in 2014 and then Hero Finds Tiffin, they probably would seem very similar. But I think it's important to understand the aspects of Harry Styles in 2013 and 14 that led to things like this, because it wasn't just him being like skinny and gangly and tall and having curly hair and being British and having tattoos. It was like the things he would do on stage. I feel so lame even talking about this, but it was like these weird things that he would do on stage that people would see as aggressive, kind of, and not in a negative way. Like they thought it was like a sexy aggressive. And he still kind of does some of those things, I think. Like, he still does the spitting water everywhere thing. So it's like, when I'm thinking about who I would cast in this movie, I would want, like, an Aaron Taylor Johnson. Because I feel like he kind of still has that look, but he has a, like, darker, more mysterious, more, like, tough vibe that I don't think Hero Finds Tiffin gives me for this movie. There's also this dynamic between Christian and Anna where he's the super abnormal rich guy who takes all of this way too serious, and she's so out of her element around him. But they don't foil his super serious, elusive, tough guy character with her being Bella from Twilight, like LDS level long skirt, has never heard of downloading an MP3 file before. She's just a normal person.
My playroom.
Like your Xbox and stuff?
Look, I can't believe I'm sitting here praising 50 Shades of Grey either. It's just, after watching these movies, I have to appreciate what they've done for the genre. Anna doesn't just sit there silently, followed by a montage. And honestly, as much hate as the character gets for being really stale, in comparison to someone like Tessa, she's pretty charismatic.
I will launder this item.
And somehow they're able to give Jamie Dornan lines of dialogue like this.
If you were mine, you wouldn't be able to sit down for a week. I don't make love. I fuck. Hard.
And realistically, if someone says this to me in real life, I would not be able to stifle a laugh. But when I watch this, I feel like I get what I'm supposed to be feeling when I watch After. Like, this is how I'm supposed to feel when Hardin's doing stuff like that. It just never makes me feel that way, though. I feel grossed out when he says stuff like that. I feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's just like watching two, like, college freshmen explore each other's bodies, and I feel very uncomfortable watching it. Whereas Anna and Christian are fully grown adults. And this is without even mentioning the sex scenes themselves, which is what got me to this in the first place. Just the editing and the budget to be able to have like actual good music in the soundtrack makes it so much less awkward and easier to watch. And the actors don't have no nudity clauses in their contracts, so it really takes it there. And it becomes this adult movie instead of being something that feels like a PG-13 movie gone R, which is what After is, but I don't think it's what it should feel like. It feels like smut made for teenagers, and I don't want to think about that for too long. And since I've mentioned it already, Ellie Goulding, Sia, for the sole purpose of creating an environment for this movie. These soundtracks were events when they came out. The first one was the 7th best-selling album of 2015. On its debut, it charted right behind If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. This is where Earned It and Love Me Like You Do come from. This movie. The sex scene that we just watched in After has CBAP levels of bad love-making music. I'm not saying that they need Beyonce, but like, something that adds to that ambiance and that like sexy, dark vibe. Like they give generic Cole's pop music for every single scene. Anyway, I honestly just needed a break from talking about After, but we'll get back to it. Tessa wakes up late to a call from Kim asking if she's gonna make it downstairs in the next 5 minutes. She says yes, gets speed dressed in that same ass outfit, and goes to leave. We get another totally unhinged performance from the Crazy Eyes School of Acting, and these scenes just don't read as serious to me. I don't feel like they're even taking it seriously, so how can I? He literally does the magician tablecloth pull, like come on! Call me crazy, but I think just doing this face does not a good performance make. This feels like when me and one of my friends reenact the Marriage Story fight, like just for fun.
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead!
The words are there. The volume's there. We're making angry faces. I don't know if I'd call Tessa and Harry's angry faces, but they're trying. But no fight's actually happening. You know, I'm not convinced. But the reason that they're fighting in the first place is because Hardin wants to talk about their situation, but Tessa's stressed and she has to get to work and she's like, why did you even come here? And then she accidentally spills the beans about the guy she made out with last night, and he says he slept with Molly. You know the story, same as the book. Tessa meets the gang downstairs and tells Trevor that she and Hardin aren't dating anymore. And she finds out that Hardin and Trevor actually know each other from work, from when Hardin used to work at Vance.
Kind of a sad story. We were best of friends, and then we became lovers. And then I found a red hair on my pillow.
But more importantly, they won that guy over last night and Vance scored his investment, which is a big up for Tessa. Landon's in this next scene and Hardin's asking him for advice.
I thought you were an imposter for a second.
Look,
You thought he was what?
And something about Landon's performance in this movie feels so much more confident than the last movie.
I realized how stupid that was. Yeah.
He's also in it a lot less, so maybe it has to do with him being less nervous about the weight of the movie that he has to carry. But it feels like in the later seasons of Riverdale where they're just like, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna give my all to the most nonsensical role and scenario in all of television.
Inside I'm hollowed out, outside's a paper shroud.
The next day at work, Trevor wishes Tessa a happy birthday and gives her a budget plan that he made her that outlines how much money she could save on Ubers by buying a used car. And to thank him for this, she kisses him on the mouth. This movie's done nothing, besides the flirty-ish nightcap scene, but nothing to establish Trevor as a legitimate romantic interest, and this issue will come back later, so I'll talk more about it then. But just like the book, she does things because the script says to do it, and we don't even really know why. We cut directly to the next scene where she and Landon are riding around in her new used car. They're reading horoscopes and somehow Joseph Stalin comes up. Talk about Hardin and she says she blocked him. And this season really only exists to deliver that piece of information and show you that she got the car. Surely there was a better way to show us this, but whatever. Now is when Tessa goes to the apartment because she thinks Harry will be gone for Christmas. So of course Harry shows up with his mom, whose name is not Anne here, thankfully. Someone grew some taste. I can't remember what her name is, but I know it's not Anne.
Honestly, I thought you were going to be covered in tattoos, green hair, and a piercing on your bean.
I'm sorry, did she just say that she thought Tessa would have a piercing? But before we can wonder about that, something important happens. Hardin tells Tessa that he couldn't tell his mom about the bet. Bet. Now, I don't know what he considers a bet to be, but he very clearly dared himself to make her fall in love.
Here's a dare.
So, are they retconning the plot of the last movie to be a bet? And if so, is it the same bet as the book? Or was it a bet to make her fall in love? None of these questions will be answered, so don't worry. But she agrees to go along with the lie and not mention the bet or the breakup. He smiles, which is so unlike the book. It's her birthday, so his mom asks her to stay in town. They look at his baby pictures. Oh my god, so fun. And in this conversation, Tessa says she's in the process of switching her major from econ to English. So why and how does she have that internship? And I'm not trying to be CinemaSins here, but like, if she's getting paid super well as written in the book, and she's clearly not getting school credit for this because she's A, freshman, and B, not an English major, then what makes this an internship and not just a job? They go to bed and fondle each other. Weird scene. The next day, she heads over to her mom's. It's very clearly summer here. Every tree in this entire movie so far has been green. It was enough to make it set in a nondescript place that isn't Washington. I get that. It's cheaper to film in Georgia. I understand logistics. But come on, it's so clearly summer. Look at that vegetation. Something weird happens here. She never even makes it inside the house. Noah walks over and starts talking about the thing with your dad. And then right at that moment, he gets a call from Tessa's mom. And Tessa takes the phone from him and answers it. And I guess they didn't want to go through the hassle of editing this into a FaceTime or even directing both of them to act the same way. Selma Blair is acting as though this is a FaceTime. She's looking at her phone instead of holding it up to her ear, and she's holding it about yay high. But she also says, is she there yet? When she answers the phone, when it's very clearly Tessa on the FaceTime. And Tessa also doesn't have the phone to her ear, but she's also not at all holding it as if it were a FaceTime. This part's stupid anyway. She wants to know her dad. Her mom doesn't care and doesn't get why she wants to know the dad. Tessa drives back to the unnamed city she goes to college in and meets Hardin at their ugly warehouse apartment. And this is shot exactly like dance school photography. If you or someone you know took dance classes and had to get professional pictures taken, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It just looks like amateur photography, like a car guy's Instagram, or photos from a warehouse wedding or something. Hardin has a nightmare. Tessa talks to Anne. We actually get to see Hardin's nightmare origin story because the last movie was PG-13 and we didn't even get to hear the story. They just talked about it super vaguely. But now they can show us in all the gory details. Yay! The mom tells Tessa she tried sending him to therapy, but nothing helped. until he met her.
He told me that the nightmares went away when he started seeing you.
She then asks why Tessa's mom hates him so much. And like, babe, what do you mean? Wasn't he banished to another country because he's such a despicable person? Why doesn't she like my perfect son? Your kid sucks. But Tessa's really vague when she tells her about what happened, so she still pretty much has no clue. And then I realized this isn't even the same apartment as the last movie, is it? Wasn't that one a studio? So is this another retcon? Is this now the apartment that Hardin pays for, like in the book? Or are they still watering plants for his dad's friend? But for her birthday, he agrees to do whatever she wants without complaining. Oh, where's the bar, you ask? In hell. They go ice skating and they go to hot yoga and act horny and annoying. And this is filmed in a way that evokes those same feelings as those mobile game ads where the woman like defecates all over herself and like sweats and farts on the guy at the gym. And I just want to hurt them both physically. They go home and jump straight into the shower. This is the most grating, least sexy thing I can imagine. And I have to wonder if this is supposed to be part of the appeal, like wet leggings and sports bra, notoriously the last thing you want to ever get wet and then take off. But I don't know. I just really hate it. And I hate this song. Kim calls and interrupts and asks if they can babysit Smith. And they go and watch him at the office for some reason, and Tessa does work the whole time. So it's not that he deliberately picks Hardin over Tessa like in the books. He just has no other choice. After they give the kid back, Hardin brings Tessa her early Christmas gift, the charm bracelet, which is clearly not actually engraved because they have him tell her what it says as though she can't read. He asks if they can be back together now, which, what do you mean? You were on a date all day and then you got Did that not count for anything? Then they do it in her office, fully clothed on a chair, silently, over royalty-free music. Sometime within the next week, Ken calls Trish, that's Harry's mom's name, Trish, and he asks her to come to his house for Christmas, which they do. And it's a whole party. It's not just a family gathering this time. And once I saw those pants, I knew it. This movie is definitely set in Georgia. Recast alert. We have our first of many recastings. They could no longer afford Sandy Cohen or Jennifer Beals, so this is now Ken and Karen. Hardin's mad seeing his dad being all rich and chummy and starts drinking away his emotions. Later, Ken's talking about his trip to Santorini to his guests, and Hardin goes on a really vague rant about how Ken has no sensitivity for the lives he destroyed. And then this guy catches a stray.
It's Bill Gates.
I would imagine that the not-so-close friends at this party would just assume that he did some despicable thing in Greece. They step into a not very private room, and Ken says that he's consumed by the guilt of what he did every single day. But that's not good enough for Hardin, and he hits him with a 1-2 punch. Trish isn't pleased, she didn't ask for any of this drama, and he says, get this, you may have forgotten everything, but I can't. Hey, stupid fuck. You know that thing that scarred you for life that you can't get out of your head? That happened to her. She was there, like, the whole time. And for some reason, they never have anyone say anything to this effect to him, which always pisses me off. Because no one ever points out the fact that the thing that you're so upset by happened to her. So no, she didn't forget. But her Uber shows up and she leaves on Christmas. This movie wants me to believe that she made that long, expensive trip and stayed for over a week and left on Christmas, the holiday that was the entire reason she was there. Tessa and him go home, she leaves to clear her head, he breaks everything. This song cannot be serious. And the sound design of this whole movie has been less than stellar. Like in those club scenes back in the beginning, the mixing was so awful. You can legitimately hear the entire time that it was filmed in a silent room and the environment sounds were added in post, which is what you're supposed to do, but I'm not supposed to be able to tell. Why are we here? Like, I can hear them all talking like this. It's very obvious that they're just talking like this in a quiet room, and then they added some party sounds over the top of it, so it sounds like you're talking loud in a packed club. Like, you're supposed to make it sound good. And then here in this scene, he's listening to music in his headphones, probably some rock and roll, and I assume that it's so loud that he can't hear her come in. But this doesn't really translate because they leave the montage song playing the whole time through this part.
Hardin.
So there's two songs playing over the top of each other at this time during a scene that would have been a lot more effective if we could just hear her walk in and hear the loud music playing muffled over his headphones. On Boxing Day, Tessa goes to work and she and Trevor are apparently the only people there. So they make plans to DoorDash some lunch together. You know, lunch that happens in the dark of night. Trevor tells her that he's moving to Seattle. This is an important detail, at least to me, because this is the only city that's ever mentioned by name. and it's 40 hours away from Atlanta, the literal opposite end of the country. And asking Hardin to move that distance is a completely different question than asking him to move a few hours away. Then this subplot about Tessa's dad is shoehorned in with one text from Noah asking if she found him, which we didn't know she was trying to do in the first place. But I know better. This is their way of establishing that. There's a montage of Hardin and Ken making up. We don't hear a word of it. Tessa goes home. Hardin bought a new lamp to replace the one he broke. Then it's New Year's Eve suddenly, and Tessa wants to go to the frat party. But first, Vance calls her and offers her a job in Seattle, 40 hours away. And he says he'll cover tuition, living expenses, and Hardin can come. Is this what it's like dating a Nepo baby? Before we get to that dilemma, it's time for the party. Tessa and Zed play beer pong together. He's very much not a love interest at all in these movies, even though that love triangle was a very major part of the story in the books, especially this book. There's more horrendous sound design here. I'm guessing they just didn't really know what sounds to put in this scene, but I'll give them a tip. Stop using this one single audio clip of Tristan and Steph talking at the same time.
Tessa.
I'm losing my mind. I'm starting to think that they're incapable of speaking independently of each other. Like they're morphing into one person.
Cherry vodka sour. Ring bitch.
They use this exact clip of them going,
Tessa.
over and over. Harry wanders off and talks to some girl in a mask. I guess this is a masquerade party. Molly shows up and she's so mad that Tessa's there. Then they play truth or dare. Molly's like, Tessa, you first. Are you a virgin? Oh, that's right. We all know you aren't. Then we get yet another unhinged performance.
I just asked you a question. Are you a whore? You have to answer honestly because it's called truth for a reason.
Then Molly reads her like the Sunday paper.
Is it true that you're a dumbass for getting back together with Hardin after he clearly fucked you for a bet?
Miss Bo.
And this once again confirms that it was a bet and not a dare, I think. Tessa does her crazy eyes again, and that is the last warning sign that we are about to descend into madness. Tessa lunges at Molly, and they have a very non-physical fight until Tessa throws one punch.
Oh my god. I thought this was a classy party.
I wish they would have gone all the way there and just got two stunt actors to literally just have a full-on fist fight that needed like severe breaking up. Like stop yelling at each other and fight for real. But also people in real life would know that she looks like a hideous freak here. And the person that's screaming and getting carried away fireman style up the stairs in their ugly ass dress
You're a whore.
is probably not the person that looks cool.
Anyway.
They go upstairs. I absolutely cannot stand their drunk acting. It makes me break out into a rash. They smush as the clock strikes 12, and while Tessa's in the bathroom, Hardin reads a text on her phone about the job in Seattle, and he thinks Trevor is planning to steal her away. He goes downstairs, gets caught talking to Dan's sister. We know the story, I won't get into the details, I'll just hit the beats. Tessa sees, kisses rando, unhinged.
What the fuck? Hey! She kissed me. Fuck off, Tessa!
More bad sound design. This song makes no sense with the scene. The next morning, Tessa wakes up alone. He wakes up on the porch at the frat house. He finds what's-her-face, gets a ride from her. Tessa's driving and she drops her phone and picks it up at a red light. Her light turns green and then she gets T-boned. I can't tell if this was just edited wrong or maybe it was done like this to absolve her from texting and driving scrutiny since she's not in the wrong. But I don't know why the phone needed to be involved at all, since even if she wasn't texting, she still would have got hit because someone ran the red light. But aside from that, this scene's not tense at all. I'm about to spoil a couple movies, so if you haven't seen Whiplash or Uncut Gems, skip ahead like a minute or something. In Whiplash, that wreck hits you like it hits him. You do not see it coming at all. The last time I watched that movie, which is like the 4th time I've seen it ever, I gasped when the wreck happened. Like I knew it was coming, but it still caught me by surprise. And you're so amped up and stressed out by that part that it just creates this immediate shock. And in Uncut Gems, when he gets shot at the end, you're just like, it's shocking. It just happens. And this wreck, nothing. In fact, here's me and my friend's reaction when we were rewatching it for this video. But it gets worse because when Hardin rides by, she's already in the ambulance. So he gets out of the car and chases the ambulance and yells, Tessa! Sound design in this movie. Hardin goes on the hunt, calling hospitals, but Landon shows up first and he's pissed. He tackles him, tells him it's his fault because he didn't come home and she was out looking for him, which No. I mean, sure, I guess in a roundabout way that's true, in the same way that a child of divorce thinks the divorce is their fault. But she was driving fine. She stopped on red, went on go, that's driver's ed, baby. The other person ran the red light and T-boned her. There was literally nothing that she could have done to avoid that. Harry could have been in the car with her. She still would have got T-boned. My personal favorite part of this movie happens.
Tessa?
What do you want, Horton?
I'm not fucking playing with you!
Shut the fuck up and listen to me. You're toxic and you're bad news.
Trevor lays it all down for Horton and tells him to stay away from her if he knows what's good for her. Okay. Now, the reason that I said earlier that them not establishing Trevor as a real love interest for Tessa would become a problem is that I don't really understand what the tone of this is supposed to be. To me, on first watch, it seems like it's supposed to be kind of like deranged. He has Tessa almost in a hostage situation. You know, she just got in a wreck. She's confused. She got T-boned. She makes a miraculously fast recovery, by the way. But he swoops in. He's like, stay away, Harden. And maybe I'm a little tainted because I think the last movie I saw Dylan Sprouse in was this movie Dismissed, where he plays this insane student who, quote, would kill for a good grade. And I think my brain is filling the Zane hole in the plot with him, which I know from having finished the series that, small spoiler if you haven't figured it out yet, Zane is a secretly maniacal and evil character. So I'm watching this like, oh, okay, that's what they're going for with Trevor. But he doesn't ever get this treatment again. So I truly don't know. Like, was he being genuinely protective? Or was he like being kind of crazy? I don't know. Because if he was being genuinely protective, why am I on his side? Like, he's kind of right. When Tessa gets home, there's a letter from Harden. Basically, he says that the girl at the party was one of his old conquests who he had to apologize to. For what, Harden? What did you have to apologize to her for, Harden? Kind of burying the lead there, aren't we, Harden? But who knows? They're not going to tell us, that's for sure. And then he breaks up with her via letter. And while she's reading this, we see him drinking liquor on a plane headed to England. You know what we haven't had in a while? A montage. Tessa leaves her teary voicemail, but we don't get to hear it because montage. But I honestly don't really care about this because the soundtrack is good for once. I'm guessing this is what they spent their whole budget on. For this montage, it's Little Mix's song from their third album, Get Weird, titled Love Me or Leave Me Here, which is just this gorgeous ballad. And they honestly are carrying the emotion of this scene. Like, the only thing that's making me mildly emotional is this song and their singing. Completely detached from the plot of what's going on in this movie right now. Harden has a nightmare where he sees Tessa instead of his mom. Tessa gets invited to Vance's party. Harden's filling out job applications, I think, for in England. He has this heart-to-heart with his mom about how that night wasn't his dad's fault and the only person he's punishing for being mad at his dad still is himself. He says it's not fair that his dad gets to be happy and she's alone. She tells him that she's not alone, she's actually dating her neighbor Mike. And then she tells him that he needs to get on a plane right now and go win Tessa back at Vance's party. This part is so stupid. I want you to remember how this went in the book. Party, fight with Zane, boxers, pretty dramatic. But this is it in the movie. They're both at the party. Vance proposes to Kim. Actually, he has Smith do it for him. No comment. Tessa and Trevor talk about Seattle. Trevor admits that when she was in the hospital, he told Harden to stay away, and then is like, I have more to say, but excuse me for a second. We don't ever find out what he had to say, or why he ran away like that. I'm guessing maybe he's supposed to be nervous, but he's never been presented to us as a nervous character before. He's been quite confident. Then Tessa spots Harden upstairs, drops her champagne flute. It appears as though she's leaving and Harden runs outside to look for her. She says, "You're never gonna leave me alone, are you?" And then silently ushers him into her Uber, which is driven again by that comedic relief character from the beginning. Then we get more stupid narration from Harry, which I think is this movie's way of trying to make him the other protagonist, like in the book. They go to the tattoo shop. He gets another gnarly, infected-looking tattoo. They go walking down the streets. Same beardy guy from the beginning tries to talk to Tessa. Harden grabs him away, and then Tessa's like, Dad? The end. Do I think this movie is better than the first one? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. This movie doesn't feel real. None of these movies feel like movies at all. Does anyone else feel that way? Like, you ever do a project or a craft or something and you have this super vivid image in your head of what it's going to look like, and then you make it and you're like, oh, it's just that. It's not right. It's not the good thing that I imagined. It's just like the shitty version that I made. That's how I feel about this movie. And it's not the book to movie thing, because I've read books that have been adapted into movies, even bad movies. Like, this one just isn't real. And don't worry, because it only gets worse. Thanks for coming on this journey with me once again. I'm still working on the video that I hinted to in my last video and that I also may have laid an Easter egg for in this video, or maybe not. Thank you so much for the love on my last video. Thank you also for the love on my parody movies video. Speaking of that video, my audience metrics were crazy different, which tells me that those of you who usually watch my videos probably didn't see that one. So go check that out. I promise it's just as good as everything else I upload. Big things are coming. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second movie, this one's gonna, I don't even know what's gonna be in it. I know how it ends, I remember. Yeah. Dad? Wait, I'm gonna predict how our face is gonna be like, and then we can put this next to it and see if it's like, okay.
Dad?
Dad? Remember that clip from, was that you that was sending it to me, that clip from, I think it's Sofia Coppola, isn't it her? And she's like acting the movie. She's
yes!
Like, she's like,
Dad?
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 That's how I think Tessa's gonna be like.